minsan legitimate. So anyway, thank you for bringing it up and you have the floor, Senator Padilla.
Ginoong Pangulo, gusto ko naman pong ibalita.
Minsan legitimate. So anyway, thank you for bringing it up and you have the floor, Senator Padilla.
Ginoong Pangulo, gusto ko naman pong ibalita sa ating mga kasama na naging maganda po ang responde ng Commission on Human Rights sapagkat kaninang umaga po nakipagpulong sila sa atin at nakipagpulong po sila sa USAA at kay Senator Bato de la Rosa patungkol po sa nangyari na karahasan at pang-aabuso sa karapatang pantao ng ating mga kasama dito sa Senado. Pangalawa, gusto ko lamang din pong iparating sa ating mga taong bayan na magkakaiba po ang kaso ni Senator Trillanes at Senator De Lima sa kaso po ni Senator Bato. Dahil si Senator Bato, ang warrant po niya ay hindi galing sa Pilipinas. Ang warrant po niyan ay galing sa ibang bansa, sa isang dayuhang korte. Ito po ay malayo doon sa usapin na sila ang kustudiya po ni Senator De Lima at ni Senator Trillanes dito lang sa Pilipinas. Ito pong mangyayari kay Senator Bato ay dadalhin po sa ibang bansa. Medyo yung po pag-isipan nating mabuti. Dapat bang mangyari muli ang nangyari kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte? Dapat bang mangyari pa yan muli sa isang Pilipino? Yun lamang po, sana alam natin ang pagkakaiba ng warrant galing sa Pilipinas at warrant sa isang korte lang ng ibang bansa. Yun po, maraming salamat.
Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order, Mr.
We were going to recognize Senator Marcoleta, but this is a point of order,
Yes.
so we recognize
Yes,
Senator
Mr.
Pangilinan.
President. My understanding is this matter was already referred to the Committee on Rules. And all such manifestations should have been referred to the Committee on Rules.
Senator Pangilinan, Senator Lacson gave several privileged speech, even if the matter was already referred to the committee report.
I
So,
understand, Mr.
as a matter of tradition,
I understand, Mr.
we allow that.
Ginoong Pangulo, pinilabas yung warrant of arrest kagabi lang, tapos na tayo dito.
I
Yes, that's why
understand.
Na sinabi po na yung warrant of arrest ay tunay.
I understand, Mr. President, and therefore I'm appealing that perhaps this matter should be tackled in the committee rather than in this in plenary, so that we can address other concerns, Mr. President.
The appeal-
And
the
for the
appeal-
record,
Paano natin pag-uusapan
And-
yung ibang...
And for the record, Mr. President, I still have the floor. And for the record, Mr. President, we voted against resolution number 44. So to say that we have this resolution, yes, but there are senators who voted against it. And therefore, it is not necessarily our agreement with the points being raised by the good senator from Camarines Norte.
For the record, Senator Padilla did mention a while ago that he doesn't take it against and he acknowledges that some senators voted against it, and it's on the record. Having said that, the appeal is noted, but I just like to mention that we usually give each other leeway depending on the importance of the matter, and the threat to Senator Bato is live. There's been no official communication that he is free until a Philippine court issues a warrant of arrest. No, so I ask the patience of each member, but acknowledge the statement and the interpretation, the proper interpretation of the rules by Senator Pangilinan. So you
May
may
we ask
proceed,
Senator Marcoleta, Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Marcoleta, you're
Been
now
waiting for
recognized.
quite a while.
Monday. Ni hindi ko nga alam na darating siya. Nalaman ko lang na darating siya dahil ang minority floor leader na kapatid ko tumayo dyan and he addressed the Senate President and nagpasalamat siya sa public service ng Senate President, Senator Tito Soto, which I also believe is well-deserved. Sinabi niya na maganda ang pakitungaan sa kanya ni Senate President Tito Soto. And then sinabi niya na we have the numbers and Senator Bato is present. Nagulat din ako. Katabi ko si Lawrence, ako, nagulat ako, wala akong idea. Hindi ko alam kung nasan siya, hindi ko alam na malapit na siya. I have no idea kung nasan siya. So kung paano nadamay ang kotse ko is a mystery to me, dear colleagues, and the public. In fact, Senator Kiko, can attest, you saw me downstairs sa basement dahil pareho kami dyan madalas dumaan at sabi niya pa sa akin, oh, dito kayo nagdidiskusyon ng staff mo, hindi na dun sa hagdanan dahil ilang beses ko na siya naharangan sa hagdanan, sa hallway na napakakitid, na nagdidiskusyon with my staff. Sabi ko, oo nga, ang haba ng mga diskusyon namin. Siguro naman kung dala ko si Senator Bato, medyo kinakabakabahan ako na makita ko dun ni Senator Kiko, di ba? So, it is a mystery to me. Paano ako nadamay at yung sasakyan ko? If the gentleman wanted to know paano nakarating si Senator Kiko, then why not ask him? Sorry, Senator Bato, kung paano nakarating si Senator Bato, then ask him. Or ask the now Senate President, who was the one who said that nandiyan na siya. Wala ko talaga akong alam. So, Mr. President, a false public imputation, whenever made, is exactly what the above-mentioned rules were designated to prevent. Unverified allegations about a colleague falls below the standard of professionalism that is demanded of public officials. Magulo na nga ang mundo, magulo na ang Pilipinas, wag na nating dagdagan. Don't say things about your colleagues that are not true. I trust that under the leadership of my brother, Alan Peter Cayetano, whom I know, not just as a public servant, but as my younger brother, this chamber will conduct itself with sobriety, fairness, and respect for the truth and respect for one another. Mr. Senate President, I will keep this manifestation short. Napakarami pa akong trabaho. Mag-aaral pa ako para sa hearing ko on the rising prices of electricity. Mag-aaral pa ako to support our colleagues who will be the next chairperson of the Committee on Health, the Committee on Energy, at napakarami pa ho nating trabaho kailangan gawin. So I leave that as it is, and I hope that this will not be repeated again. Thank you.
Senator Marcoleta, can we give way to Senator Lacson since...
Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Senator Marcoleta.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah. Can we give
Magtatanong lang sana ako, Mr. President, kay Senator Pia. Mga ilang tanong.
will Senator Lacson also interpolate
This is just very short.
a manifestation?
Pero
Senator
Mr. President,
Marcoleta,
ako po nakatayo na rito bago pa siya tumayo. Siguro po, kung
would you
sila
allow
unang
me,
tumayo.
Senator Lacson, just because he was first, but he was mentioned, so I am in the quandary of who of the two gentlemen will give way.
May I, Mr. President?
Yeah. Senator Marcoleta, may I ask you this personal favor since the gentleman was mentioned?
Sige po, mas matanda naman siya sa akin eh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Senator Lacson is recognized.
I want to put it on record that I sincerely apologize to our distinguished colleague, Senator Pia Cayetano. That information was relayed to me by a fairly reliable source, no? And if that was a mistake, then I sincerely apologize. I thought I made a public statement because I thought it was just a very not really a serious matter, but because maski saan sumakay si Senator Bato, as everybody would agree, it is of no moment. No? Sa amin siguro, kung malaman namin kay Senator Ligardo pa nakasakay, baka doon pa kami magkaroon ng issue. Pero maski kanino pa siyang nakasakay na sasakyan, lalo na from the majority, sa tingin ko wala naman pong problema, walang issue. Kaya parang isip ko, okay lang yung i-share ko yung information that I received from, ang sabi ko, from a fairly reliable source. Now, if it is false, then, or even if it is not false, then I sincerely apologize, Mr. President.
Well, Senator Pia said that she will leave it at that, so I will not refer it to any committee. Senator Lacson apologized, you accepted. If I may just interject that it might seem innocent, Senator Lacson, but to those who are commenting, they think it's a crime. Even because people got confused with the timeline, that when he got here, we didn't know there was an ICC warrant and everything. I told the media after my sister speaks, sa akin siya nakasakay, and I did not tell my sister, and I did not tell many of the members in the majority that he will attend. Ang sabi ko lang, please be there. Senator Marcoleta.
Mr. President, tatanong ko lang po sana kay Sen Pia, kung halimbawa po ako'y nakisakay sa kanyang sasakyan, siya po ba o ako'y nakagawa ng isang krimen dito sa ating bansa?
Sa akin lang po, kung kahit sino sa mga kasamahan natin dito na they need a ride, na nangyari na yon. Minsan may event tayo, sumasakay ako sa kotse ni Senator Mig Subiri, nakasakay na rin ako sa kotse ni Senator Loren. Nakasakay na rin ako sa kotse ni Senator Angara. Sino pa sa inyo hindi nagbibigay sa akin ng ride? I would be happy to give a colleague a ride. But I'm just saying, that's why I had to repeat na I don't have an issue with Senator Bato arriving in the Senate. I have an issue with the aspersion of malice na parang patago kong pinarating dito na gamit ang kotse ko na walang katotohanan. Kaya to answer your question, wala naman hong masama doon.
Yun nga po eh. Kasi na rin po ang umamin na wala naman pong masama, ay ba't kinakailangan pong gawan pa po ng post yun? Pangalawa pong tanong, Sir President, Senator Pia. Kung halimbawa po, ginawa ko yun, nakisakay ako sa inyo, dahil meron lang akong gustong pagtaguan. Hindi po ba napagtitibay natin, nakasabihan natin mga Pilipino, at nakuha ko naman talagang magtago dahil nakisakay nga ako sa inyo. Hindi ba napatunayan natin ang isang kasabihan, Mr. President, Senator Pia, na nagtatali-talinuhan ng matsing, nauutakan pa rin. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Mr. President, this is not a response to Senator Marcoleta's questions or statements, but I just also want to put on record na yung tinatanggap ko po yung apology ni Senator Lacson. Wala akong problema sa akin yun. Kaya lang po, ako'y nakikiusap sa lahat ng kasamahan natin na mag-ingat naman tayo sa statements because these are very troubling times. Everybody is so sensitive. Kung sino yung kakampi mo, lahat na ng ginawa niya tama. Kung sino yung kagalit mo, lahat na ng ginawa niya mali. So why would you make a statement that would arouse angry feelings or questions about my credibility or about anything that would create any negative implication on your fellow senators? Sana po wag ganon. Yun lang sasabihin ko. Sana walang ganon. Kasi kung wala namang intensyon, di wag na lang sabihin, di ba? Yun lang naman po ang sa akin. Thank you very much.
Yes, emotions are high, but we are all called to a higher calling. We all have sentiments. I don't think it will be stopped. It will come out in the next few weeks depending on the issue. Having said that, as Senator Pangilinan said yesterday, maraming issue, kailangan tumutok. For the record, sa kotse ko sumakay si Senator Bato, as he said. When I talked to him and said, how can I go in the Senate? I was aghast. Senador ka bakit problemang pumasok ka? But naisip ko yung commercial ni Amang Parika, yung sabi, sumakay ka pa. Kaya sabi ko, sa akin ka na sumakay. That's why it's so obvious that I knew he was here because when I spoke earlier. Having said that, an apology was made, an explanation was made, so move on from that. Senator Marcoleta, because you gave in to my request, I'm listed as first in the privilege speech. You're second. I will ask you if you want to go first.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise on a question of personal and collective privilege.
Your Senator Marcoleta is recognized.
The sponsors of Senate Resolution number 395, four of whom, despite differences, I have my respects, except for one, Mr. President, are urging Senator Ronald De La Rosa to voluntarily surrender to the peoples of the proper authorities and seek judicial remedies in accordance with the Constitution and applicable laws and rules. Mr. President, I respectfully oppose this resolution on the ground that the moment Senator De La Rosa surrenders, he will be immediately brought outside Philippine territory and deprived of the protection and remedies of Philippine laws and courts. To surrender Senator De La Rosa is to effectively surrender Philippine sovereignty itself. The International Criminal Court Pre-Trial Chamber 1, Mr. President, has confirmed that it issued a warrant of arrest against Senator De La Rosa on November 6, 2025. It unsealed the warrant only on May 11, 2026. The warrant orders the arrest and surrender of Senator De La Rosa. Under Article 102 of the Rome Statute, to surrender Senator De La Rosa is to deliver him to the custody of the ICC in the Netherlands, a foreign jurisdiction where Philippine laws have no force and Philippine courts can do nothing. While the sponsors pretend that they want Senator De La Rosa surrendered to authorities in the Philippines, in reality, they want him handcuffed, dragged to the airport, dumped on a plane, and banished to the clutches of the ICC in the Netherlands. While the sponsors claim they want Senator De La Rosa to avail of Philippine judicial remedies, in reality, they want him removed from territorial jurisdiction of the Philippine courts. and therefore deprived of the rights and remedies that every Filipino enjoy under our laws and constitutional protection of due process. In fact, Mr. President, if the sponsors will have their way, the Senator De La Rosa is transported to the Netherlands. The constitutional issues now pending before the Philippine Supreme Court will become moot and academic. The Philippine Supreme Court will be ousted of jurisdiction and prevented from fulfilling its constitutional mandate. There will be no end to this constitutional crisis, for in the years to come, the ICC, with much delight, will pick us up one by one, Mr. President. Only the Supreme Court, Mr. President, can stop this nonsense. The sponsors of Senate Resolution number 395 cited the service of warrants of arrest on the late former Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, former Senators Laila de Lima, and former Senator Antonio Trillanes. But please take note, Mr. President, they did not mention that their co-sponsor, Panfilo Lacson, evaded service of arrest warrant. The sponsors acknowledged that the late former Senator Enrile, former Senator De Lima, and former Senator Trillanes were all subjected to arrest warrants issued by local courts. For the record, Mr. President, all of them have exercised their rights under Philippine laws and availed of Philippine judicial remedies. Yet the sponsors are blind to the peculiar situation of Senator De La Rosa. Unlike the late Senator Enrile et al., who face arrest warrants issued by Philippine courts, Senator De La Rosa is facing an arrest warrant issued by the ICC, a foreign court which jurisdiction the Philippines does not recognize anymore. Moreover, unlike the former Senator Enrile et al., who availed of the rights and remedies of Philippine laws and courts, Senator De La Rosa will be deprived of all this, as he will be banished to foreign land on the other side of the planet, beyond the reach of Philippine laws, and forever detached from his family and constituents. Therefore, if the sponsors are sincere in their desire that Senator De La Rosa be accorded the same rights and remedies as those enjoyed by Senator Enrile et al., they should not allow his surrender to the ICC. They should instead withdraw Resolution number 395. The sponsors recognize that under Republic Act 9851, it is the regional trial court that has exclusive original jurisdiction over offenses constituting crimes against humanity. This statement of the sponsors reinforces the position of the majority that the ICC warrant of arrest should not be implemented against Senator De La Rosa, and he must remain under the Senate custodial protection under the ICC arrest until the ICC arrest is quashed by Philippine court. First, Section 18 of RA 9851 provides that it is the Philippine Regional Trial Court that has exclusive original jurisdiction over crimes against humanity. Section 17 allows the transfer of jurisdiction to a foreign court only by way of extradition and provided by the Philippine court, provided the Philippine court is unable to try and decide the case. Therefore, RA 9851 itself bars the ICC from taking jurisdiction. The acts attributed to Senator De La Rosa. Kagaya po ng nasabi ko na kahapon, Mr. President, wala po tayong extradition treaty sa ICC. At wala na po tayong membership sa Rome Statute sapagkat nag-withdraw na po tayo. Sa makatwid, wala na pong treaty. Yun po ay nakasaad sa Article 17 ng 9851. Second, at the United Nations, the Philippine government through the permanent representative pronounced that the state policy under RA 9851, Philippine courts have the exclusive jurisdiction over crimes against humanity. It also declared that Philippine courts have the competence and capacity to try and decide these cases. Kung ganun po pala, this is the national policy already articulated even before the halls of the United Nations. Bakit pinipilit pa natin na i-serve ang isang warrant of arrest na hindi na natin kinikilala ang jurisdiction ng lintik na ICC na yan? Hence, the Philippine state policy is to assert and exercise local jurisdiction rather than recognize foreign jurisdiction such as that of the ICC. Third, the Philippine government has assumed and exercised local jurisdiction under RA 9851 over the crimes arising from extrajudicial killings allegedly committed by Senator De La Rosa. Philippine local jurisdiction already set in when Senator De La Rosa was served a subpoena by the CIDG in connection with its investigation of said extrajudicial killings. Senator De La Rosa has stated that he is ready to respond to the subpoena. It is of no moment, Mr. President, that today the CIDG withdrew the subpoena. It is a legal ruse. It's a legal legerdemain. Ang akala nila kung withdraw nila yung subpoena, wini-withdraw na yung case. No, Mr. President, the case is kicking and alive. It triggered already the jurisdiction of our National Prosecution Service and eventually the courts of this country. The crimes under investigation by the CIDG are the same crimes for which the ICC has issued a warrant, Mr. President. Under the principle of complementarity, said ICC arrest warrants can no longer be enforced because there is now a genuine domestic investigation and prosecution currently taking place in this country. The assumption of jurisdiction by Philippines over the acts attributed to Senator De La Rosa and the person of Senator De La Rosa automatically and absolutely bar the ICC from exercising jurisdiction over the same acts and on his person. These circumstances and by reason of the principle of complementarity and the Rome Statute strip the ICC, Mr. President, of its jurisdiction. Therefore, given that the sponsors themselves admit that under Republic Act number 9851, Philippine courts have exclusive original jurisdiction over the crimes for which the ICC has issued an arrest warrant against Senator De La Rosa, given that the Philippines have assumed jurisdiction over said crimes when it served the subpoena on Senator De La Rosa, and given that Senator De La Rosa will respond to the subpoena, said sponsors cannot but agree that the ICC warrant of arrest should not be enforced on the good senator. It should be borne in mind, Mr. President, that the protective custody granted to Senator De La Rosa is for the sole purpose of ensuring the following. First, that only Philippine warrant of arrest, not an ICC warrant of arrest, will be enforced against him. Second, upon service of Philippine arrest warrant, he shall enjoy all the rights and privileges granted by the Constitution and the laws of the Philippines. Third, that he can avail of all Philippine administrative and judicial remedies and processes. Fourth, he shall remain in Philippine territory where he can exhaust all said administrative and judicial remedies and processes. And finally, and most important of all, the jurisdiction that the Philippines has assumed over his alleged crimes under R. 9851 must be exercised to the total exclusion of the ICC. Finally, Mr. President, the sponsors of Senate Resolution number 395 question the constitutional and statutory basis of the resolution granting De La Rosa, Senator De La Rosa, the protective custody of the Senate. These purposes, Mr. President, are legitimate. They do not contravene any Philippine law. In fact, they ensure that the Philippine laws are respected and enforced in Philippine territory to the exclusion of the Rome Statute that the Philippines no longer recognize by reason of its withdrawal therefrom. The protective custody granted to Senator De La Rosa addresses not only an extraordinary threat to his liberty, but also an existential threat to the integrity of the Philippine Senate, and by extension, a grave peril to the independence of the Republic itself from foreign interference. It is a threat emanating from a source that the Philippine Constitution laws did not anticipate. A foreign entity, Mr. President, the ICC, which jurisdiction is not only questionable but also lost due to the Philippines' withdrawal from the Rome Statute. The protective custody addresses a threat whose profound ramifications include regime change and outright interference in the sovereign affairs of the Philippines. To give inroads to the ICC is to enable it to structurally alter the Philippine Senate and disenfranchise Filipino voters for the arrested senator will be rendered futile, whose votes for the arrested senator will be rendered futile and meaningless. The ICC will transform Philippine agencies as its own puppet and tools and hold hostage Philippine officials, civilian and military, against whom it can initiate prosecution anytime and in perpetuity. The Senate's custodial protection is born out of self-preservation, which is the first law of nature for both men and institution, Mr. President. The Philippine Senate has granted custodial protection to witnesses in order to ensure the continuity and integrity of its legislative hearings. It is with more reason that it can and should grant custodial protection to its members to enable them to discharge their mandate unmolested by a foreign entity like the ICC and its local tentacles and subalterns. The Philippine Senate and its members enjoy privileges and immunities under the Constitution and laws so that they may discharge their functions effectively, efficiently. Specific privileges and immunities were designed to address the usual disruption to these functions. However, they did not anticipate disruptions from a foreign source. Thus, a purposive interpretation of the Constitution and laws is necessary in order for the Philippine Senate to meet new forms and sources of challenges. For this reason, Mr. President, it adopted Resolution Number 44 and implemented the same with respect to Senator De La Rosa. The Philippine Supreme Court did not also see it coming. It has to do its job and rise to the occasion, Mr. President. In the end, the dignity and integrity of the person of Senator De La Rosa as well as of any member of the Senate, including the sponsors, represent the dignity and integrity of the institution of the Philippine Senate vis-a-vis foreign interference. Resolution number 395 will weaken its dignity and in the process destroy its integrity as an institution that stands as the last bastion of democracy. Dapat lamang na ibasura ang Resolution number 395. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Former Senate President, Minority Leader Senator Soto is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry. I definitely don't mind after Senator Pia Cayetano took the floor because of the allegation that was brought out in media about her. So I definitely support that. But I wonder what happened to our agenda because after the roll call and after Senator Pia Cayetano, I was expecting the reading of the journal be approved and in the reference of business before the privilege speeches. So may I know from the majority
To answer
leader?
the Minority Leader, it's not a privilege speech. He rose on a
Yeah, I know.
matter of collective
Yes,
and personal privilege, which can be done anytime.
Yes,
and which has
I mean
priority.
Senator Pia Cayetano, there's no problem with that.
What I'm saying is that Senator Marcoleta,
I
I told
see.
him he can go ahead of me sa privilege speech, but he chose to rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege
All right,
instead
so-
of a privilege speech. That's my
All right.
understanding.
All right, so my question actually is for the majority leader, but if that is the answer of the...
That's my understanding, Majority Leader. Am I correct?
then we will do away with the agenda if that is the case. Go ahead.
Actually, that's not true, Minority Leader, because the question of personal and collective privilege can be as simple as you cannot hear the sound, may tubig na tumutulo, or may mga police or NBI sa labas. So, collective and personal. Having said that, he gave his speech and we can now go to the agenda. However, Senator Padilla actually had the floor last night and we only asked him and Senator Pangilinan if we can, of course, the graciousness of the Minority Leader, that we adjourn. So Senator Pangilinan is raising his hand and Senator Padilla is raising. What's the pleasure of Senator Pangilinan? But yes, go ahead, please.
Manifestation on the
Yeah, if it's a Senator Padilla manifestation lang, no?
Yes, just a quick manifestation
Yes.
on the earlier speech delivered by Senator Marcoleta. Mr. President, I understand the resolution has yet to be referred.
Yes.
It has not been calendared. And we believe, after consulting with the authors as well as our minority leader, with due respect, we disagree with a number of the points and arguments raised by Senator Marcoleta, but that we prefer that the resolution be referred to the Committee on Rules, wherein we can discuss and perhaps hear it, Mr. President.
You're correct, we will follow the procedure. My
Thank you.
understanding is his rising on a question of personal privilege is why he took offense with the resolution.
And we share.
Yeah, and not the merits or
Yes.
whether or not we're going to pass it or not or put it on the floor.
Yes, and we're just sharing the sentiment
Yes.
of the authors that,
That's
while
in
we
order.
object and do not agree with a number of the arguments raised by Senator Marcoleta, we would rather that the same be referred to the Committee on Rules where we can ventilate the issue further.
Your manifestation is in
Thank you,
order
Mr. President.
and at the proper time because it's not in our calendar of business.
Yes,
Senator,
Mr. President. Mr. President, may I respectfully refer the personal and collective privilege of the good Senator Dante Marcoleta to the Committee on Rules, Mr. President. So move.
is there any objection? If not, it's referred to the Committee
Yes.
on Rules.
Mr.
Senator
President, I was about to, with the indulgence and with the approval of the body, as mentioned a while ago by our distinguished Senate President, the floor was, yesterday, Senator Robin Padilla has the floor, and he is seeking the floor, Mr. President. May I be allowed first, Mr. President, to may I move that we acknowledge and recognize the good gentleman, Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Senator Padilla, you're recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayorya. Mga mahal kong kasama, mga kagalang-galang kong kasama, at mga karespeto kong mga kasama, meron po akong naiwang usapin kahapon sa ating sesyon. Tungkol po ito sa asal o decorum ng isa sa ating kasamahan. Kaya naman, muli po akong humingi ng pagkakataon na makapagsalita ukol dito upang ipaalala at bigyang diin ang ating mga alituntunin dito sa Senado. Naniniwala po ako na mahalagang mapanatili natin ang respeto, paggalang at kaayusan sa bawat pagdinig at talakayan. Ayon po sa ating rules, ang sabi po dyan, Section 93, Rule number 34, Unparliamentary Acts and Language. Ang sabi po dyan, acts and language which offend a senator or any public institution shall be deemed unparliamentary. Sa wikang Pilipino, ang mga kilos at pananalitang nakakasama ng loob sa isang senador o alinmang pampublikong institusyon ay itinuturing na hindi naaayon sa kagandahang asal ng parlamentaryo. Malinaw po na sa tuntunin na ito ng Senado na anumang kilos at pananalitang nakakasama ng loob sa isang senador o sa alinmang pagpampublikong institusyon ay hindi katanggap-tanggap. Bilang sanggunian, ipapakita ko po sa inyo ang isang video ni Senador Kiko Pangilinan kung saan makikita ang isang mainit na palitan sa pagitan niya at ng isa pang nating senador at ngayon ay Senate President bilang halimbawa ng kontekstong aking tinutukoy.
Pwede mo ba sabihin sa anak mo, anak, pag mali sila, gumawa ka na rin ng mali. Anak, okay lang mang bastos kasi mas bastos sila eh. Anak, okay lang magbully kasi mas bully sila. Ako, hindi ko sasabihin yon. Ako, sasabihin ko,
At di yun ang sinasabi.
hindi, yun ang sinasabi mo, Mr. President, and I'm
No,
not yet
Mr.
finished.
President,
Kasi
of course
you said, tama,
We beg to
Italian,
disagree,
Mr. President, I'm not yet finished, no?
Yeah, we beg to
So, Mr. President, this is the question. The resolution,
Ayun po, nakita po natin na napakagandang halimbawa na ilang beses pong gustong magsalita ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan na hindi dumaan sa tamang procedure na hindi binanggit ang Mr. President. Pumapasok po siya sa usapan, ngunit naging magalang ang Senator Alan Peter Cayetano sa mabuting pananalita. Sinabi po niyang, I'm not finished. Kahapon po, nakita po natin ang pangbubulyaw ng ating kasama. Ang sabi po nila, tayo daw po ay balat sibuyas. Hindi po yan pagiging balat sibuyas. Ito po ay nasa rules of the Senate. At ang sabi din po ng ating dating Senate President na ito daw po ay nangyayari talaga, nagsisigawan. Mga mahal kong kasama, kung ikaw ay nagsasabi ng iyong talumpati at ikaw ay passionate, okay lang yun. Pero para sigawan mo ang kasama mo, nasaan ang rules of the Senate? Si Ginoong Kiko Pangilinan, ng ating senador, ay ilang beses na pong senador. Ako po ay neophyte kung tawagin. Napakainam po sana kung pakitaan niya ako ng magandang asal at ipakita sa akin na ganito, iho, ang pagsasabi ng I'm not finished. Hindi yung I have the floor with the burning eyes and the very high voice. Ladies and gentlemen, on record po ito. Nangyari po ito on record sa Senado. Humihingi po siya ng pag-abot ng kamay sa akin, hindi na on record. Paano ko po tatanggapin ng kamay niya? Ginawa niya yan on record. Kaya sana po, hinihingi po natin bilang pakikisa sa aking dasal na siya ay, kung siya talaga ay nais niyang mag-abot ng kamay, on record. Sabihin niya mismo sa plenaryo na siya ay nagkamali. Katulad po ng ginawa ni Senator Lacson na tumayo kanina at nagsabing siya ay nagkamali. Hindi po ito usapin ng lalabas tayo sa media at sasabihin mong balat sibuyas ako. Di tapon na natin itong rules of the Senate. Tapon na natin to. Di pa natin pala susundin eh. Mga mahal kong kasama, ang sinasabi ko dito, tanggalin natin yan sa record dahil ayokong mababasa yan ng aking mga anak at apo na ang isang Muslim senator ay sinisigaw-sigawan dito sa plenaryo. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po sa binigay niyong pagkakataon.
Thank you very much, Senator Robin Padilla. We recognize once again Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ang suggestion ko ay dahil napanood ko kagabi sa balita na nais pong magsampa ng ethics case laban sa atin na si Senator Robin Padilla. So ang suggestion ko, isampa niya yung ethics case at doon na po sa Ethics Committee natin pag-usapan ito dahil marami pang ibang mga mas importanteng bagay sa aking paniwala ang dapat natin talakayin. Maraming salamat po. For the record, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. We recognize Senator Padilla once again.
Wala na po siguro mas importante kung rules of the Senate ang pinag-uusapan natin. So, ang ibig mong sabihin ba niyan na hindi kayang mahumingi ng paumanhin ng isang veteran senator? Para sa kanyang pagtaas ng boses? Yun po ba?
Nakikita ko po ang matamis na ngiti ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Napakahirap po bang sabihin nun at kailangan pa natin umabot sa ethics?
May I...
like avail of the privileged hour. But before that, Mr. President, Madam President, may I be allowed to move that we dispense first with the reading of the journal of the 62nd session, May 11 and May 12, and consider the same as approved. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Madam President, our distinguished Senate President, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, would like to deliver a privileged speech. I move that he be recognized, Madam President.
We recognize Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano for his privileged speech.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, the book of James talks about faith, and the book of James basically tells us that faith without action is dead. So, importante po ang faith, pero importante po ay kumilos tayo ayon sa ating pananampalataya. Everyone has faith. Some people have faith in money, some people have faith in relationships, some people have faith in power. But of course, I'm talking about the faith in God, the faith in our country, and the faith in each other. So, Madam President, this leadership change is an opportunity for the Senate to take the lead in areas where the ordinary Filipino feel neglected. without pointing fingers or no condemnation for any other leader or any other Congress in the past, let me talk about how I feel people feel at this point in time. I do believe that despite our algorithms in our social media and despite the news, most people are not talking about politics. Yes, they're talking about whether they like President Marcos, VP Sara, or all the other contenders. Whenever there are surveys in the news, pinag-uusapan sinong pambato nila sa 2028. But I would say that these are more politicians and political junkies. Most of our people are just trying to have a comfortable life, and more than that, just trying to exist. Yung personal safety lang, makapag-aral yung anak, madala sa ospital or may gamot man lang kung may sakit, how to make ends meet, paano siguraduhin na kung part-time yung trabaho, magkasya. Pag hindi part-time yung trabaho, siguraduhin na hindi magsara yung kumpanya o yung maliit na negosyo. People are thinking about the future of the country, but the reality is we act as individuals and as families and as communities before we act as a nation. Madaming umaasa sa leadership change na to sa pagdating ng direksyon ng ating bansa. So we can keep talking about Senator Bato, and 100% I will always owe him for risking his liberty, and after siya habuling kahapon, risking his safety and his life, risking his quality time with his family, risking the many, many things that he can do for being here today. No one can say where he'll be going in the next few days, the next few weeks. I really hope we all realize that the Constitution is the highest law of the land. Me, I follow the Bible, then the Constitution. So walang anumang bansa ang inuuna ang international court sa kanilang sariling konstitusyon. Kahit anong treaty po, sabi po sa Pangilinan versus Cayetano Supreme Court case na kapag yung treaty o nilalaman nito o implementation nito, I'm paraphrasing, is unconstitutional, ang masusunod yung Constitution, hindi po yung batas. So putting that aside, putting aside, like everyone else, I am tempted to talk about politics or to talk about Senator Bato. When we talk about corruption, partly it is about politics because the mishandling of the flood control scam, and when I say mishandling, I'm talking in general, whether you talk about the ICC, whether you talk about the whole of government, whether you talk about the DPWH, whether you talk about the Blue Ribbon Committee, even myself, even my participation in any of this investigation or non-participation, nilalahat ko na. We all mishandled it for many reasons. We didn't start with the truth. We didn't start with sino ang most guilty, ano ba talaga ang ghost, ano po ang hindi, etc. But the point is, Mr. President, Madam President, napakalaki ng issue na to in terms of amount and in terms of time and saan na ilagay. To give you a perspective, 50 billion lang ang budget ng DPWH in the last year of President GMA. But I think last year, 2025, kung na-release lahat, I think 2024, lumampas ng 1 trillion sa pesos sa DPWH alone. Pero hindi totoo na lahat ng flood control ay ghost. At hindi totoo na binulsa ang buong 1 trillion pesos or binulsa ang buong 350 billion. Pero yun ang tumatak. And the problem is, any Tom, Dick, and Harry na barangay captain, konsihal, mayor, congressman, even senators, administration, opposition, pag meron kang isang contractor dun sa lugar na yon, nakasama sa listahan, ang target hindi the truth Ang target, dumihan yung kalaban. So, I remember from the start of my career, yung nagsasabi sa akin, pag naglabang kayo sa putikan, lahat kayo mapuputikan. No, you cannot get in the mud to fight someone and then siguro si Bato mukha ni Mr. Clean. But for the rest of us, when we're in the mud, di ba? The reality is madudumihan tayo. And the problem there, the context that I want to say is that during a crisis, we have a global crisis. Energy crisis, crisis of inflation, crisis of faith in government, crisis in international law. With what the US, Iran and its allies, US and Israel are doing. The rule of law is being debated all around the world. Even Europe, the oldest allies of the US, many of the principles is being thrown out of the window every day. So there are several crises ongoing. Kung titignan lang natin from a political lens yung corruption, sabi natin political lang yan, partially true. Maraming gumamit ng flood control para tirahin lang yung kalaban. At the proper time siguro po, we'll go to that, but I don't want this to be a political speech. But look at it from a social, economic, and moral lens. From an economic lens, we did not only mishandle the investigation, but what to do when we found out of all this corruption. So government spending is so important to our GDP and productivity of our country, nag-slow down to. Until today po, hindi masyadong nagre-release ang DBM at nahihirapan pa rin ang DPWH at yung ibang ahensya na mag-bid. Maraming dahilan yan. Ito problema. Dalawa harapin natin. Tag-ulan, so malamang maraming baha na dadating. And wala naman nagbago since the flood control scam So malamang marami tayong baha. God forbid, sana hindi. But ang problema towards the end of the year, opposite naman ang problema. Meron daw po tayong super El Nino. So sobrang init at walang tubig, apektado naman ang ating agriculture. I hope all the predictions about the calamity and the state of our economy will be wrong. I hope it will be very, very much rosy. But if you look at the GDP projections, for example, since the last quarter last year, 50% off So pag sinabing 5%, 2.5%. Pag sinabing 6%, 3% lang. Ang layo. And the GDP might look like, a highfalutin economic term, and I'd rather use presyo, trabaho, kita. Masyado ba mataas ang presyo na hindi natin mabili yung dapat natin bilhin? Maliit ba masyado ang kita na hindi pa rin natin pwedeng bilhin yung gusto natin bilhin kahit mababa ang presyo? And trabaho. May trabaho ba ang tao? And not only trabaho na kumikita ang tao, but trabaho ba na may dignidad? So from an economic lens, corruption affects our everyday problems. And I think during the times that we talk about big scandals in our country, corruption scandals, suddenly, hindi lang presyo, trabaho at kita, hindi lang PTK, may isa pang K or C if English ang gagamitin natin, corruption. So right now, I feel that on the mind of every mother, of every father, of every lolo, lola, is the basics, health, education, pagkain, kuryente. Of course, sa mga highly urbanized, it's the internet, no? Food prices are steadily rising. Unfortunately, it seems that the 7% inflation rate is here to stay. Hindi mawawala yon. So just put it simply, kung kumikita ka ng 100 pesos, in the year, 93 pesos lang ang halaga ng pera mo kasi 7% yung inflation. I mean, you can argue with me about the math, pero simple lang natin, di ba? If you have 1,000 pesos, 930 na lang yan. If you have 10,000 pesos, 9,300. So hindi masyado tumataas ang minimum wage at ang sahod sa ating bansa. Pero yung presyo ng bilihin, at least 7%. Yun ang problema natin sa food prices. Bakit po? Hindi naman po lahat sa inflation rate ay food prices, although most of it is food prices. So food is rising even higher than 7%. We are an archipelago where we lack fish. Hindi tayo makapagpangisda. I mean, I know Senator Pangilinan spoke much about this and many other senators in the past, but that's a reality now. Hindi natin makalimutan yung mga ka-age ko na ang isang kampanya po ni Madam President Cory Aquino noon is magkano ang presyo ng galunggong at that time in 1986. And short time after that or sometime after that, nag-i-import na tayo ng galunggong. Ngayon po, luxury na po ang galunggong. In fact, nung araw sabi sa amin, may asin ka lang, o I remember yung kwento ng aming dating Vice Mayor, may kapitbahay siya na may mga shell ng kuhol. So gagataan nila yon at libre pa naman ang kangkong nung araw. Pagkatapos nila gataan at kainin yon, ibibilad nila yung shell. Bakit po? Kasi pag hiniram nung kapitbahay yung shell, gagataan ulit dahil ang kailangan mo lang ay yung gata at saka yung kangkong, tapos yun ang ulam sa kain. But we know in the last 10 years, pati kanin naging luxury na. Kaya nga may makikita kang pamilya ng 4, 5, 6, 7, isang noodles na hati-hati na. Of course, we did not ignore that. We have passed many laws making sure that we fortify even the noodles. We have kahapon, Senator Tulfo, yung AIX law. We have many interventions, no? But this crisis that we are facing, hindi natin ramdam kaagad dito sa Senate kasi air condition, kasi kahit papano, mataas ang sweldo. Di ba? Ang unang nakaramdam nito, mga tricycle driver, jeepney driver, yung mga naka-diesel. Pero nabigyan ng isang beses ng ayuda, that doesn't mean okay na sila. Kasi pababa ng pababa yung kanilang kita. More than 70 days after February 28, the economic slowdown is now affecting our investment level. Even the sentiment, nagdadahan-dahan na. And even yung mga sigurado, katulad halimbawa ng mga pharmaceuticals, medyo wala kailangan mo talaga bumili ng gamot kung may sakit ka. But most of our medicine is imported. And even those that are generic and are produced in the Philippines, to get them through Metro Manila with the traffic and the logistic costs have doubled. Not to mention if you have to bring it to Masbate, you have to bring it to Aklan, to Catanduanes, to Romblon. The logistics in Mindanao or even Batanes is incredible because again, apektado tong lahat. The prices of gas was expected to go back to normal during the first few days of the crisis. Unfortunately, tinamaan yung critical infrastructure. So halimbawa po, sa Qatar at Bahrain, nung tinamaan po ang natural gas, ang subproduct or yung byproduct ng natural gas is urea or yung pangunahing ingredient or ginagamit na fertilizer. So tatlo kagad yung tama. Bakit? Europe uses liquefied gas or natural gas for heating. So tumaas ang presyo ng diesel dahil yun ang kapalit. Tapos nung tinamaan yung production ng yung mismong planta ng urea, tumaas ngayon yung presyo ng fertilizer. India, who has the best processing plants or one of the best and supplies to us and to Asia, ang problema, they have more than 1.4 billion people. And they also use heating gas, they also use diesel, they also use urea, and they are the first to say, we will not export rice, we will not export fertilizer unless our needs are there. So I thank the Vietnamese government for continuing to help us by the supply of rice. In a recent survey, only 10% of people believe that government, so hindi lang po to hindi lang to Office of President, Vice President, Senate, House, local governments, although ang tingin ko kung magsasurvey tayo, mas mabango ang mga local governments kasi sila ang frontline. Only 10% of people believe that we are actually addressing the high prices of even the basic goods. 90% says that inflation, wages, 95% says that all of these are serious issues. 75% says that corruption has increased in the last 12 months. No, not only that we're not addressing it properly. So once we think that corruption is a way of life, I will go. So I went to the political, talking about the economic. I will now go to the social and the spiritual. Once we start believing na hindi natin to kaya, once na naniwala tayong bahala na, once na sinabi natin, hindi, corruption, hindi natin matatanggal yan, it's our soul that gets damaged. We start believing that values can be changed. We start believing that, konting corruption, okay na rin yan, etc. Economically, there are empirical facts that some nations, certain level of corruption did not affect their corruption. The corruption did not affect their economics, but it did affect their soul. And eventually, it affected not only their economics, but their being one nation. In the group I've been with in the last few years, which is Transforming the Nation, one of the teaching is that there are 7 spheres or 7 mountains of culture. Family, church, government, business, education, health, and media. Media is both the artistry and also the journalism. Ang sabi po dun kasi, if you want real change, and let me go back to the Bible, the first thing the Lord Jesus said, and I'm addressing myself to Christians, and Brother Robin and anyone from a different religion can of course also relate or parallelize what I've been saying here. But in the Christian faith, ang unang sinabi ni Lord Jesus, repent, which means change your mind, magbago, magbago, because the kingdom of heaven is near. At ang kasunod po dito as a priority, when the apostles saw miracles after miracles, they saw the Lord Jesus healing people, producing bread, producing fish when there was none. Pero they were going on a journey and they were looking at each other. Wala namang Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's nung araw. Wala rin naman dun mga kotse or EVs or trains. So they were looking at each other and thinking, saan tayo kukuha ng pagkain? Saan tayo matutulog? The Lord Jesus looked at them and said, seek first the kingdom and my righteousness. But he didn't stop there. And everything else shall be added unto you. So my point of view is that there is a value system. There's a heavenly value system, there's an earthly value system. In the earthly value system, we value power, we value money, we value popularity, we value the GDP, etc. In the heavenly, they value people. That's why in the Christian faith, God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever shall believe shall be saved and shall not perish. So why? Because God loved the imperfect man so much. So what's my point? If family and church and media come together at sinabing, oh, sobra na tong scam ng ating, I was going to say fertilizer scam, but that was 20 years ago, flood control scam. And they have a MOA. Nag-MOA ang DPWH, nag-MOA ang Congress, ang BICAM, ang Executive Department, ang DBM, church leaders from the Muslim community, the Roman Catholic community, Evangelical community, Iglesia ni Cristo, Seventh-day Advent, lahat nandun, nagpirmahan. That will have some effect. But if the media, for example, movies, are saying, okay lang naman magnakaw basta't konti, or iba na yung nakakalamang, etong anak ko, medyo hindi ganun kagaling sa school pero magaling mangopya, kaya honor siya. Or let's say in health, di ba? Kung sasabihin sa kanya na, alam mo hindi ka gagaling kung wala tong gamot na to, pero di ba nakawin na lang natin kasi corrupt din naman ang gobyerno. My point is, Madam President, family, the church, government, business, education, health, and media have to work together to address all of these issues. And let me close by a quote from a manual I read. Anya Dique po ang pangalan po, ang last name nung gumawa. Sabi niya, nung naging Christian daw ang Africa, lalong naging corrupt. And in her country, she was saying that nung dumami ang Christians, dumami ang corruption, sumama ang politika, much as we are experiencing now, nawalan daw siya ng gana, nawalan siya ng pag-asa, nag-pray daw siya. Sabi niya, Lord, ayoko na sa politika, ayoko na sa public, ayoko na sa gobyerno. Walang pag-asa tong bansa namin. In one of her meditations daw, the Lord told her, ang problema, you want a political solution for a spiritual problem. You want an economic solution for a spiritual problem. You want a socio-economic political problem, solution for a spiritual problem. So, Madam President, I stand here today humbled by the task that you put on my shoulders, pledging to serve not only the 13 who voted to put me in place here in the Senate, but for the 24, but to serve first God and serve our people. I ask this August Chamber, baguhin natin direksyon natin. May mga iba wala tayong choice. So pagdating ng articles of impeachment, forthwith, we will act upon it. This leadership change is not about the impeachment. All of us here will be on trial and we will all do our best and we have to be impartial. Okay, that's clear. Having said that, paano natin isasabay ang problema ng corruption? And having said that, pag corruption, mahilig tayo magturo sa mga kasama natin eh. Maybe it's necessary kung guilty talaga. Maybe it was done for political purposes. Saka na natin pag-usapan yon. But we have to find a way to investigate and change the corruption system in our country without burning the whole house down. Diba? I mean, kung may anay sa bahay, tanggalin yung anay. Kung may mga daga sa bahay, hulihin ang daga o patayin, tanggalin sa bahay, hindi mo susunugin yung buong bahay. No? But thirdly, Madam President, the economics. Kapit sa patalim ang maraming Pilipino. There are many things we can do. For example, we have had a lot of laws for agricultural modernization. But we need a productivity law for agriculture. Palaki ng palaki ang ating population, pero yung productivity natin nagpla-plateau eh. Tapos lalo ngayon na may Super El Nino, sabi nila ang fiscal space natin maliit. Yes, kasi nga during the 6 years o 5 years ng Aquino, maganda yung ekonomiya until the pandemic, 3.5 years ng Duterte, maganda yung ekonomiya. But since then, we have borrowed heavily. So yung debt to GDP natin medyo mabigat na, and then yung credit ratings natin apektado na. But still, Fidel Ramos was in a worse case. And he was able to say 10% savings at ilipat yung 10% na yun sa mga priorities. Korea at one point in time had so much faith in their leaders that they sold personal owned jewelry to pay their national debt and to rise up. Japan was devastated by 2 atomic bombs. But look at Japan now. So, Madam President, I'm here to stand today to say, let's list down our priorities together with the minority. Ano yung 5, 7, 10 na pinaka-importanting batas? So, I'm meeting with the LEDAC people tomorrow kasi may LEDAC sa Tuesday. And hopefully, any member of this Senate submit to the Secretariat by tonight or tomorrow. Ano yung priority? But ang akin lang ipapakiusap sa inyo, wag muna yung personal advocacy kahit maganda. Ano yung game changers na mababago ang direksyon ng ating bansa?
Senate President Alan Cayetano, ang dati nating Senate President Tito Soto, and the former majority leader, si
Chairman. Of course, the authority is with the new chairman, but we're a collegial body here. So, put it another way, wala tayong mapapasa kung hindi tayong magko-compromise at magpapakiusapan, no? But to assure the gentleman that we want to take out any delays, we seek to complete by Monday the chairmanships, and I think today we're ready with the ratio, no? Because we have a 13-9-2, 13-11 or 13-9-2, or the 2 can choose to have their own ratio or they can choose to join majority minority. So like Senator P and I in 2022 were independent, but at one point Senator Miggs asked me or his staff that could you join the majority for purposes of the ratio. And I don't think that's a problem, no? Usually mas controversial sa CA at saka sa SET, but I'm confident that Senator Soto and myself have solved this already twice, when Senator Escudero was SP and when he was SP. So if there is an odd number, I think we will be able to solve that, no?
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President. If that is the case, then I would like to manifest that, Mr. President, the change of leadership should not prevent this chamber from acting on measures that are already ripe for sponsorship and plenary discussions. In fact, many of our bills and conventions have been included in the weekly agenda, this weekly agenda. And then next week, Mr. President, we are planning to do the same. For example, like what you have mentioned, under my chairmanship of the Committee on Social Justice, the bill institutionalizing the IX was passed yesterday. And we would like to thank the Senate President for that on third reading and right for BICAM. Under the Committee on Foreign Relations, though, Madam Chair, Mr. President, the 4 conventions of nuclear safety, liability, and management of hazardous waste treaties that ensure clear accountability measures in case of nuclear incidents are now for sponsorship. Also for sponsorship, Mr. President, are the Tokyo Convention, which seeks the recognition of qualifications in higher education, wherein our Madam President is one of the co-author for fair opportunities and dignity for Filipino professional students abroad. Also, Mr. President, Madam President, the status of visiting forces agreement with Canada and New Zealand respectively, which aims to build a broader coalition in the Pacific and improve our disaster response. Therefore, Mr. President, respectfully move to allow the outgoing chairpersons to proceed with the committee hearings, sponsorship, and participation in bicameral conference proceedings for measures already referred to or acted upon by the respective committees until their successors, which I believe that will be on Monday, Mr. President, that's what you've said, shall have been elected or designated consistent with Section 19 of the Rules of the Senate. But there's a lot of bills, Mr. President, that are that needs immediate sponsorship. Case in point, Mr. President, Madam President, Senate Bill 1905, or the Act providing for Magna Carta of Barangay Health Workers, sponsored by Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senate Bill 1511, Amendment to RA 9439, Act prohibiting detention of patients in hospitals and medical clinics. Ito po ay mga proteksyon para sa mga pasyente, Madam President, Ginoong Pangulo, na dapat po nating talakayin at maisabatas po at kailangan po, Ginoong Pangulo. Nariyan din po, Ginoong Pangulo, Senate Bill 1584, yung Amendment to Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act na sponsored po ng ating kasama si Senator Robin Padilla. Nariyan din po ang Senate Bill 1988, mandating accessibility, inclusivity in all tourism sites for persons with disabilities, senior citizens, sponsored naman po ni Senator JV at Senadora Camille Villar. Nariyan din po yung Senate Bill 2092, an act declaring Waling-Waling as the national orchid of the Philippines, sponsored by Senator Loren Legarda. So, Ginoong Pangulo, ang tanong ko po, maaari po ba, if we are bound to follow the rules, specifically Section 19, shouldn't we follow the status quo, Mr. President?
Senator Marcoleta asked if he can,
Thank you, Mr.
with the
President.
permission of Senator.
Go ahead po.
We recognize
appreciate-
Senator Marcoleta.
Interject.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the problems being encountered by Senator Erwin. Pero masasabi ko po, Mr. President, mas maswerte siya sa akin dahil siya po ay nakitaan ko na ng napakarami pong mga bills niya na nag-transition na po sa third reading. May na-report na po yung mga committee, mga nakapag-report na po. At yung iba nga po ay naidepensa niya dito sa ating bulwagan. Ako po yung tatlong major bills ko po na inaasahan ko po sana na mapast track. Pagkatapos po ng 8 buwan, bago lang po na hearing, minsan lang po eh. Yung isa po, nasa pang 10 buwan na po, yung pong 12% VAT reduction sa sales ng electricity. Baka sakali pong ma-agenda na po for first hearing po. Wala po. Kami po ang dapat magreklamo sapagkat walang lumilitaw po sa mga inaakala naming mga major bills na makakatulong po sa ating mga mamamayan. Naintindihan ko po yung kanyang discomfort sapagkat gusto niya talaga na maisulong lahat ang mga inaakala niyang panukalong batas na makakatulong. Ganon din po ang representasyong ito, Mr. President. Pero hindi po ako nawawalan ng pag-asa kasi alam ko po yung ating legislative meal po ay unpredictable. Ang dami po. There are 1,001 factors that might come in and interfere in our deliberations and entire process of enacting a particular bill. So sana po ay magkaunawaan na lamang tayo. Hindi lamang po kayong naapektuhan. Mas lalo po ako, isip-isipin po ninyo, 10 buwan na po nakakaraan. Yung isa pong bill na para sa akin ay napaka-importante. Lalong-lalo na po ngayon sapagkat tumaas na po ang lahat. Hindi pa po, na-agenda na po last week, kaya nga nagkaroon po ng disruption ngayon. Baka sakali pong may agenda na sa lalong madaling panahon. Salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Madam President, to answer directly Senator Tulfo, may I proceed?
Please proceed.
So first, for measures already on the floor, there's no reason it cannot proceed. We will have a majority caucus as soon as we adjourn. I think Senator Win will speak. I don't know if anyone else will speak. So as soon as we can start our caucus, we'll take that up. For COM reports that are not yet filed, it's more of prudence because we have to finalize the membership, the 13-9-2. From 11-13, it was a 15-9 ratio. So there's a little bit of difference. But again, this shouldn't be a problem in non-controversial bills kasi nag-uusap-usap. Having said that, my suggestions also is that we resubmit what are our priority 10 bills. And then I personally will talk to the new chairpersons. If they will not hear it with a certain period of time, can we create a subcommittee? Which we usually do naman. I remember the first time I was Senator Angara. Ed was such a senior senator then, but sabi niya, Alan, create ng subcommittee, pero ako na mag-hear nito. And then he took over, and natuto ako sa ganun move kasi pati pala merienda, chairman magbabayad, pero siya yung nag-hear. But bumilis tuloy lahat, no? The third one is maybe, I'm sure the minority leader will be in the LEDAC. Once we get a sense of the timing of the impeachment, we have to discuss either the legislative calendar and the schedule of the impeachment. Because if we can do both, remember when we talk about legislation, there's the hearings and then there's plenary. You need time for both. So assuming we agree on 3 or 4 days nung hearing, is that half day para meron pa rin legislative meal? Kasi kailangan mo din ng 1 day ng motion day. Lahat ng korte ay merong isang araw na may motion para ma-submit. Tapos merong, usually, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Friday. Para nga during the weekend, mabasa lahat ito. Di ba? And that is barring any, my wife is from Bicol, from Altiwi, Albay. So, I ask you to pray harder with us na hindi mag-worsen yung sitwasyon ng Mayon, di ba? Any calamity from the super El Nino to storms, linogs, or earthquakes, or yung pagputok ng bulkan, no, whether it's in Negros or etong sa Albay, we'll definitely need in our situation now, we'll need our attention, whether individually or as a group or the committee. So we really have to figure out as a body. So that was the essence nga ng aking speech. So thank you for pointing out, Senator Tulfo, that in fact there are urgent necessary bills that are there. Last point, I did start going to the possible chairmans yesterday. So like Senator Bongo, who will most probably be our chairman of the Committee on Health, said that most of the bills tinitignan niya, but most of the bills walang problema, pwedeng siya, pwedeng si Senator Risa. I actually approached Senator Amy about the treaties, and she told me, go ahead. But then when I went to see her today, she said, go ahead, but malamang hindi ko kunin yung committee na yon. So mali pala yung nakonsulta ko. So I have to talk to sino magiging chairman. And as you know, we are in need of a regular or full-time majority leader because Senator Joel Villanueva is not disposed to accept that position. If you want to join the majority, so far the majority leader is open, Senator Tulfo.
No, that's a good offer, but let me think about it,
And
Mr.
that would give
President.
us an even number of 14, easier for computation.
Let me seek divine guidance, Mr. President.
No, I
Every
believe
morning
in
when
that.
I
I
wake
believe in
up,
that, yes.
I ask and pray to the Holy Spirit to always guide me for right decisions, Mr. President.
And I praise you for that because we all should do that. No? Yeah.
Well, anyway, Madam President, Mr. President, we're amenable to that, to the creation of subcommittees. We hope that the new chairpersons, Mr. President, will honor your word. I will not stay longer, Mr. President. Therefore, we submit to the wisdom of our new Senate President. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
President.
Senator Tulfo.
Thank you, Senator Tulfo. We recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Salamat, Madam President. Not to interpolate the good gentleman from Taguig, but
You're always welcome,
and
my
Materos.
colleague in several congresses in
Yes.
different times of crisis and of generosity in our country. You can interpolate me anytime.
Salamat, Madam President, good gentleman. But it's really just to thank the good gentleman from Palawan dun po sa pagbanggit muli sa dalawa sa bills na hiningan ko ng clarification kahapon sa Senate President. Ang mga kalahating dosena ito, and thank you Senator Erwin sa pagbanggit muli dun sa Anti-Hospital Detention Bill at saka yung Magna Carta of Barangay Health Workers Bill. Dahil ito po, Madam President, itong dalawa ay halimbawa ng ready for amendments na on the floor. So, nagpapasalamat po ako kay Senator Erwin at dahil nag-motion sila kanina kung itatakal po yan, sinasegundahan ko po subject to the decision of the new leadership kung alin sa mga bills na ito sa iba't iba nating mga komite na hinog na for completion of a certain period, for example, in the legislative
Yes.
process,
So-
para at least maisara na po. So yun
So
lamang
just for
po,
the information of
Mr. Madam
everyone,
President.
after the speech of Senator Win, the majority will go into a caucus. You're most welcome to join us if you're going to join the majority. Afterwards, on Thursday, I will be meeting the Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary Generals, the COMSECs, the other department heads, and I did this in the House of Representatives to encourage them and empower them. So parang bibingka, yung apoy na sa ibabaw na sa ilalim. So on one hand, the chairman will make certain decisions, but we want to empower the COMSECs to push. And tamang-tama yung timing kasi when we were planning this yesterday, nagsabi nga na may LEDAC sa Tuesday. So right after the luncheon, which will talk about legislation and how to prioritize and how do you call it, work very productively in the box, but how to work out of the box. We will be also meeting with the LEDAC Secretariat at 3 o'clock. No? So yun lang po, if you can submit by today or tomorrow, what's your top 10 bills, but maybe put an asterisk or whatever. What's the 7 or 10 bills we can agree on as a body that will really help us during this time of crisis. No?
Salamat po sa
Thank
good
you.
gentleman from Taguig Pateros, Madam President, and I will happily and proudly stay with the minority.
Thank you.
Thank you,
For now,
Senator Ontiveros.
I will accept that answer for now, Madam President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, Mr. President.
Mr. President, nalimutan ko lang po kanina. Salamat rin kay Senator Chis Escudero, Senator Angara, Senator Grace, and Senator Nancy Binay. And of course, headed by our finance Chair, Senator Lauren Legarda, sila Senator Pia, na pinaglaban po itong free tertiary education. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bongo.
Mr. President, before we recognize Senator Marcoleta to explain his vote, I think the chairperson of the committee, Senator Erwin Tulfo, would just like to put into the record some of the matters that is part of what has been discussed on the floor.
Senator Tulfo has both the legislative acumen, but also he served as secretary, so he knows the practical side of all of this.
Thank you,
Senator Tulfo,
Mr. President, our new majority floor leader. Nais ko lamang pong sabihin po, maraming salamat po sa pagpapaalala na doon po sa clause section 18 at 19, wala pong penalty po doon. Pagkos yan po ay plano namin na ilalagay po natin sa BICAM. Pag nagkaroon po ng BICAM na, lalagyan po natin ng penalty po yan. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, for that reminder.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Rodante Marcoleta for his explanation of votes. So move, Mr. President.
And just a point kay Senator Tulfo, and it can be administrative dahil public officials naman ito, or it may be grounds for disqualification if they are a candidate. So thank you for your work, Senator Tulfo. Senator Marcoleta, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I voted yes in relation to Senate Bill 1966. In doing so, Mr. President, I'm also conscious of the fact that I hope we will find a more equitable way of intervention, socio-economic intervention to the marginalized and the poorest of the poor. Kasi po, alam ko po yung AIX, while it serves as one of the interventions sa mga people in crisis situation, Mr. President, ang dami po kasing problema associated with it. Nandun po yung mga inclusive errors, nandyan po yung mga exclusive errors. Kuminsan po yung mga listahan, kinakailangang i-purge pa para makita natin na talagang didiretso po talaga doon sa nangangailangan. And I'm also conscious of the fact, Mr. President, that this representation has filed Senate Bill number 63, raising the coverage of the lifeline rate subsidy programs for marginalized households. Sa akin po kasing palagay, Mr. President, ito po ay, sa tingin ko lamang po ay mas mabisa sapagkat this is more equitable and it is a method by which our poorest of the poor will be targeted. Ito pong bill na ito ay tinatarget po about 5 million poor families, ranging between 25 to 27 million poor Filipinos. Kasi po ngayon ang lifeline rate, Mr. President, binago na po ng ERC from 20 kilowatt hours per month, ginawa po nilang 50 kilowatt hours. Ano pong initial po naming deliberation sa Energy Committee ng ating kasama, Senator Pia, miski siya po nabigla na yun pong 50 kilowatt per hour per month, Mr. President, ay sapat lamang po pala para pailawan ng 2 bombilya, isang electric pan, tsaka siguro isang transistor. Sabi po ni Senator Pia, ibig sabihin ba itong 50 kilowatt hours na to, wala man lang chance yung isang, for example, isang mother na nagtatrabaho rin sa isang kumpanya o sa isang opisina. Paano kung pamplansyahin ko man lang ang damit ko? Very basic naman ito. That's why, Mr. President, dito po sa bill na to, yung 200 kilowatt hours per month, ito po yung magiging subsidy ng ating mga households. Kahit na po ipalagay natin that the monetary value of 200 kilowatt hours per month, let's say is 2,500 pesos. Maliit kung titingnan po, but this is regular, this is consistent, targeted, dire-diretso pong pupunta sa households, wala pong corruption dahil dumidiretso nga at wala na pong EPAL. Kaya, Mr. President, bumoto po ako dito sa AIX, tama po naman yun, kailangan din, with the hope that later on we will find a better, much better, more equitable methodology to target the needy parts of our population. Salamat po, Mr. President.
The Chair agrees with you, Senator Marcoleta. There's a balance between ayuda, the financing or capitalization of micro, small, medium enterprise, between the social interventions to the poorest of the poor. We should also look at, for example, free internet for the poorest of the poor, di ba? Kasi pareho na rin ngayon ang internet sa tubig at kuryente. Pagka ang bata walang internet tapos online yung classes, parang hindi na rin nag-aral yung bata. Thank you for your interventions, Senator Marcoleta.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, the gentleman from Nueva Ecija and Bicol region, Senator Robin Padilla, is seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
You're recognized, Brother Robin. Assalamualaikum, and thank you for coming in a very beautiful barong today.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Walaikum salam. Ako po ay nandito sa inyo pong harapan. Ginoong Pangulo, ako po ay gusto ko lamang pong linawin ang ilang mga bagay patungkol po sa napakarami pong lumalabas ngayon. Iba't ibang komento, iba't ibang opinyon na parang ang dating sa taong bayan ay magulo tayo dito. Yun po ay hindi magandang impresyon. Sapagkat yung pong nangyari na ang ating mahal na kasama, Senator De La Rosa, noong siya po ay lumabas dito sa atin, malinaw na po na merong warrant of arrest galing sa ICC. Kung nung mga panahon po dati ay kine-question siya, tinatanong siya kung bakit siya nagtago. Ngayon po ay wala nang question. Ako po ay nagsasalita bilang isang artista. Sapagkat ginawa ko na po ang mga buhay ng mga magagaling na tao. Katulad po nung ginawa ko ang buhay ni Senator Lacson, yung 10,000 hours, pati po yung kanyang pagtatago, yun po ay sa kadahilan ng may prinsipyo siyang pinaglalaban. At ganoon din po nung ginawa ko ang buhay ni Senator Bato de la Rosa, may pinaglalaban na prinsipyo itong taong ito. Hindi siya kriminal. Ang napakapangit po na impresyon na binibigay, parang tayo dito sa Senado ay nagtatago tayo ng kriminal. Wala pa pong kriminal dito. Wala pa pong napapatunayan dito. At higit sa lahat, Ginoong Pangulo, ngayon lang po natin napatunayan na tama ang sinasabi ng ating mahal na kasama na may warrant of arrest sa kanya ang ICC. Kaya dito po sana, Ginoong Pangulo, nabubura na yung sinasabi na siya'y nagtatago ng walang dahilan. Yung po yung sana ang maging maliwanag sa taong bayan na meron din po tayong adopted Senate resolution. Ito po yung number 44 na malinaw po doon sa resolution na ito expressing the sense of the Senate of the Philippines to protect all Filipinos against extrajudicial rendition and guarantee then a reasonable time prior to their surrender by extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the courts and avail of legal remedies. So wala po tayong ginagawang kaimposiblihan dito dahil sinusunod po natin ang resolution natin. Dahil siya po, inaasahan natin at meron din po siyang pending na TRO sa Supreme Court. Ginoong Pangulo, sana wag po tayong magkaroon ng mga mixed messages dito. Hindi ko po hinihingi doon sa ating mga kasama na bumoto ng no dito sa resolution nito na pumanig kay Senator De La Rosa. Pero sana naman, huwag pong idamay ang buong Senado kapag sinasabi na tayo'y magulo, tayo'y katawa-tawa. Dahil tayo naman po ay nasa katwiran. Kung hindi tayo nagkakaintindihan sa katwiran, huwag tayong magsiraan. Dahil tayo naman po sumusuporta kapag tama naman at hindi naman patungkol sa ating bulwagan. Pero pagkatungkol sa ating bulwagan na ang pinag-uusapan, huwag po sana tayong magsiraan. Ito pong pagkakataon nito, Ginoong Pangulo, sana'y maging masaya tayo na nandito na ang ating kasama. Na kahit pinaghahabol, diyan ay pumunta dito at ipinakitang siya ay isang senador. Nung siya ay wala dito, hinahanap. Nung dumating, tatanungin natin, bakit siya nandito? Pambihirang buhay ito. Sana, mga mahal kong kasama, bagamat tayo ay magkakaiba ng kulay sa politika, pagdating dito sa ating bulwagan, proteksyonan natin ang Senado. Hindi dapat pinapayagan natin sa labas ng gate natin, may nag-checkpoint. Ginoong Pangulo, maraming salamat po. Wala kaming tulog. Pasensya na kayo.
I will refer the manifestation of the Honorable Senator Robin to the Padilla to the Committee on Rules and Public Order. But before that, may I make 3 points of information for all of us. Before that, an appeal sa lahat ng naka-video kagabi, whether dito sa labas ng session hall, whether dyan sa baba, dun sa ginulpi na member ng ating Office of the Sergeant of Arms, or dun sa labas, please volunteer and submit your video because we agreed with the NBI that they will conduct a fact-finding. The Senate will also conduct a fact-finding. And the NBI director promised us that if any of his agents exceeded their authority, they will be dealt with by law, whether administrative or criminal charges. I'll just finish, Senator Subirmay. So his report was that nangharas daw yung Osaha, but when I showed him the video, he was also surprised. But of course, there are many videos. So that's my first point, that in reaction to what you said, iba yung magulo Senate, iba yung ginugulo ang Senate. Diba? Kahit sinong tahimik, pag ginulo, magmumukhang magulo. But today shows you na walang gulo. Number 3, I think that is the inherent weakness of social media versus news. Legitimate, I will not use legitimate because everything is legitimate no matter what the platform. But what I'm saying is that when people cut interviews, so for example, I think Senator Trillanes said, anong pinagsasabi ng mga senador, including myself, he gave up. But if you look at my whole interview, ang sinabi ko, ang naging tradisyon at nirerespeto to ng kahit na pinaka mabibigat or pinaka mga administrasyon na inaccuse ng paggamit ng kamay na bakal, ay nagko-coordinate first bago nila iserve ang warrant dito. Number 2, we allow the senator to exhaust all legal remedies. And number 3, in the case of Senator Bato, it has to be a warrant issued by a Philippine judge in a Philippine court. And still, he has to be given the right to exhaust all his legal remedies. And then, ang tradisyon nun is that kinakausap ang senador pagka wala ng legal remedy na respetuhin din ang sarili niyang institusyon, ang Senado, by giving up. Which yun po ang ginawa ni Senator Trillanes at Senator De Lima, pero mukhang meron silang selective amnesia. Nabura yung part where they sought the protection of the Senate, nandun na sila sa pag-surrender. Secondly, lastly, nire-iterate ng NBI na pinayagan silang pumasok, pero sabi ko, siguro naman kahit pinayagan kayo pumasok, walang pumayag na makipaghabulan kayo sa isang senador. So sabi niya, yan daw ang standard pagka ang isang inaaresto ay tumakbo. Ngayon, ang sabi naman namin, look at it from our point of view. May session, we were in session, alam niyong kailangan yung boto niya, tapos hahabulin niyo para hindi makapasok ng session. So, mahaba yung usapan, no? But we and Senator Aimee, Senator Pia, Senator Loren were the voices of the institution yesterday. No, I played more of a diplomat mediator role so that we can get to that. So now that they're doing their investigation, I hope the Committee on Rules, Committee on Public Order, or if we refer it to if the pleasure of the body is the Committee on Justice or Rules instead of Public Order, we will get to it soon. But today proves that hindi tayo magulo. Pag hindi tayo ginugulo, hindi tayo magulo. Diba? Senator Zubiri? Yes.
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator
Senator Zubiri and then Senator Marcoleta, Mr. President.
Very quick, Mr. President. Mr. President, very quick, just to add to the discussion. to weigh in the discussion. Yung nangyari po sa ating OSA yesterday is, I would say, not just a very sad but tragic experience for OSA. I think I'm looking for the right word. Hindi ko lang masabi na hindi ko babastusin yung
Outraged talaga. Outraged.
We're outraged. Thank you, Senate President, for helping me. That we were outraged. He did not deserve that. Ginagawa lang po niya ang tungkulin niya, trabaho niya bilang empleyado at OSA ng ating Senado. There should have been more proper restraint on the part of the enforcement agency. And I commensurate to our staff na no moral yung ating mga OSA kahapon. We must stand by them because these are the people that will give their lives for us if there's anything that will happen in this building. And we should also be ready to give our lives for them, Mr. President. Kawawang-kawawa sila. Kaya I condemn what had happened to our OSA staff and to all the ruckus that they had created inside the Senate building, Mr. President. Tama po kayo. There's always been decorum when these things have been happened. It's happened before. We were together when Senator Laila de Lima was arrested here in the Senate. There was, but they served the warrant here initially, and she had asked if she could be served in her home, so she could go home and greet her children and say goodbye to her children. So there's a proper decorum, Mr. President.
Former Senate President, that's exactly what I said. You could have allowed him in the session hall, then informed either the Senate President, the OSAA, or the Secretary of the Senate that there's an arrest warrant. We could have suspended or discussed with you, but instead, you wanted to nab him right before entering. No? So there was much discussion on that, but thank you for your expression.
We want to tell the staff, those that are here today, that we are with them 1,000%. We are with you 1,000%. And if that had happened, that I was around, makipagsuntukan din ako sa kanila, bahala na. Diba? So, ang akin lang is, Mr. President, may I move, with the permission of the body, that the Senate shoulders medical expenses, Mr. President. Kasi may, na hospital siya, Mr. President. Yes.
Mr. President, if
Thank
I
you,
may,
President.
if I may, with the indulgence of the good
Senator
former
Legarda,
Senate President Migs, yes. It was with Senator Pia Cayetano that we went to the clinic yesterday and we saw Terence Lim, the OSA. I will not give the details on which hospital, but he was being checked by our medical doctor, and because there was supposedly a hematoma and we saw his physical condition, so we asked for an ambulance, Senator Pia and I, and he is in a private hospital now. I'm covering his personally his expenses because his medical card in the Senate would not cover the private doctors and consultations expense, the CT scan and all that, and because there is a supposed hematoma, and it's not just. I thought there was just going to be a checkup, but there was a need for a minimum of 3 days stay to check his condition because it's not as simple as that could have been dealt with in a medical clinic. All I can say was, we were shocked. Senator Pia would probably be able to explain this. I could not explain how that actually could happen at the gates of the Senate. It's something you see in the movies. It's shocking. When Senator Zubiri said, baka makipagsuntukan siya, I don't think you meant that literally. You meant it figuratively to show your outrage, to show, yes, no, I would like to, because we're not supposed, dapat hindi nagsusuntukan dito, di ba? Pero when I asked also the other OSA this morning, why did you not come to his rescue? Because the video that Senator Pia showed me was Terence Lim on the ground being mauled by a burly man and people watching him. So I asked, ba't hindi niyo tinulungan? I cannot give it the details for a fact. The spot report will explain why. They told me what happened. I cannot put it on record unless I have first-hand knowledge. But it shocked me when the OSA gave me the information.
When we are in aid of legislation and we are in a committee. Maybe
Before we have a ruling, let me just expound on the decision yesterday. The chair yesterday mentioned that in several Supreme Court decisions, as early as Arnold versus Nazareno, the Supreme Court upheld the inherent right to self-preservation of the legislative body. And the chair explained that if a committee is given a power to hold in contempt, so much more the plenary. And that there are two kinds of contempt. The indirect contempt and the direct contempt. So for example, if Maria and Pedro were now sitting in the gallery and they started shouting, if the sergeant at arms took them out, but they came back and they started throwing stones, we can hold them, or they had guns, we can send them for inquest, or we can hold them in contempt, because it's part of self-preservation. So even in the decision mentioned by Senator Lacson has to deal with the issue at hand. The ratio decidendi, or the reason for the decision, always deals with only the issue at hand. And the issue at hand then was the contempt powers of legislation in aid of legislation. But despite that, still the Supreme Court again said, indeed, the exercise of contempt power by legislature is anchored on self-preservation, and they had a footnote from the previous cases. Having said that, I'd like to ask the pleasure of the minority leader.
Yes.
Would you like to vote on it, or would you like us to send this to the legal and then give them a day or two to, or until Monday
yeah.
to, because the problem with...
I was thinking of that, Mr. President,
Yes.
if you don't mind. I'm sorry for
Yes.
interrupting
Go ahead,
you.
sir.
Because the Supreme Court itself laid down the limitations. Oh, that's why we have to discuss it in perhaps in
Yes.
the committee or
Yes.
the legal. No, the first limitation: the subject hearings were conducted in aid of legislation. 1, 2. Second limitation: the assailed rules are compliant with the publication requirement of Section 21, Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution. And the third limitation is that the committee failed to accord petitioners their constitutional right to due process relative to the conduct of its proceedings. Therefore, we were in plenary session yesterday, and then we were suspended when this event was being discussed. So, again, the pleasure, really, Mr. President, if you do not mind, is that we refer the motion
Yes.
to the committee on rules.
We are in agreement, but just to explain, one example I gave yesterday, even if it wasn't in the rules of court, or even if there's no precedent, if we were in the Supreme Court and while they were in hearing, I ran after or tried to arrest or tried to mug one of the justices, they can hold me in direct contempt, because it's really about self-preservation. So the events yesterday was so grave that yes, we need cooler heads, because we really have to discuss the problems of agriculture, the problems of the economy, problems of transportation. Naghihirap talaga mga kababayan natin. And of course, we're all aware that the House voted for impeachment yesterday, so we're all preparing for that. But at the same time, we have to show the world, including our local law enforcers, that you cannot play around with the Senate as an institution. And when you're trying to prevent a member from attending, that is direct contempt of the Senate. So I'm in agreement if we can all agree that we send it first to the
Yes.
legal, and maybe we'll invite any legal staff of all the Senate offices so that they can participate there.
Alright.
Because it's an issue that, so that we won't take one opinion, hook, line, and sinker, but get all the brilliant minds of the offices of the 24 senators, then discuss it, and we'll hold the reconsideration in abeyance until we have that, if it's acceptable to the former Senate President.
I concur. So I so move, Mr. President.
Thank you very. So, is there any objection to the motion that the ruling, the motion and the ruling to hold in contempt will be now referred and studied by our legal department, which will also invite lawyers from each and every OS or office of the senators or the 24 senators? If there's none, then
Mr. President, on the second point,
yes.
the second motion made by Senator Marcoleta proposing that Rule 14, Section 41B of the Senate Rules be amended by including a new Section 41C. Now, while I commend the Senate President for deferring action on the motion of the Honorable Marcoleta, but still, we should bear in mind that if we amend our rules, necessarily we should refer it to the Committee on Rules. We cannot just decide in plenary to right there and then amend the rules. if I am correct in that regard, Mr. President.
You're not only correct, that's what happened. I referred it to the
Yes,
committee.
that's
on
why
Rules.
I express my admiration and commendation for the action taken by the Senate President.
Yes.
So we're clear on that.
Yes. My interpretation, Senator Lacson, is that was the intent of Senator Marcoleta. That because the rules is that 1 day for consideration. Yeah, for a motion, it's 1 day. I'll just paraphrase. So my interpretation, of course, I didn't stand up and go near to Senator Marcoleta, but my interpretation was that my understanding is I always have to follow the rules. We always have to follow. So when a senator makes a motion and there is a specific rule, then we will follow. But the Committee on Rules is allowed to meet right away. But that doesn't mean they can meet right away and not follow the 1 day rule.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr.
And thank you
President.
for...
That would be all.
Yes. And to be fair to our former Senate President, Mig Subiri, he also made it very clear that our tradition is that if it is amendment of the rules, we consult and then we not only give a copy. So actually the Secretariat rewrote the proposal and maybe I could just say that all of these were a product of what happened yesterday. No, and of course most of us had some sleep last night. I don't know Senator Bato if he had good sleep. He told me he was not able to sleep last night, but Senator Padilla, who stayed with him, said you were sleeping very well. So, but maybe cooler heads today, and hopefully we'll get our job done. No? Yeah.
Yes,
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Senator Lacson. Thank you.
Mr. President. And also just to put on record, this representation, when this representation filed that motion, I was actually asking the plenary during that time about the possibility of looking into that particular incident. But anyway, Mr. President, we just also want to put on record that what we are trying to approve, Mr. President, the journal of the 61st session Wednesday was last May 6, Mr. President, not yesterday. So just to put that on record, that's May 6, 2026 was last week, and that is the motion that we are putting.
So any objection that we approve the journal of the session of Wednesday, May 6, 2026? If there's no objection or amendments, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we proceed, may I just put into the records, Mr. President, our gratitude and thanks for our guests who are here with us, guests of Senator Padilla, the Bangsamoro women from Barangay Maharlika, Taguig City. Mr. President, they are here. Guests of Senator Ontiveros, LGU officials of Bulalakaw, Oriental Mindoro, led by Mayor Lumelito Cabagay. We welcome them in this August chamber, Mr. President.
You're recognized and welcome. No?
Mr. President,
Maybe Majority Leader, in behalf also of the Senate, I also apologize to those who had to stay longer within the Senate yesterday while we were identifying the agents who ran after Senator Bato. I think even former CHED head Popoy De Vera and many others were here. And Senator Pia also reminded me that there are hearings scheduled, and just to inform the body, the tradition is even if the positions are vacant, you can continue with the scheduled hearings because they are the same members and the chairman is automatically a member. Senator Bam Aquino?
Mr. President, I'd like to clarify. There's a BICAM scheduled for Thursday on the voucher bill, which has been passed on third reading here and in the House. Should we also continue with the BICAM for the voucher program, Mr. President?
If there's no objection, I think we should all continue. And in fact, I'm hoping to have a all Senator caucus soon. I just don't know if today or tomorrow to discuss the committees and to even consult the minority even before we offer certain committees. But anything that is pending and should be, I think the only things that are technically on hold is new hearings and the sponsorships on the floor pending designation of chairmen.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator
Senator Pangilinan is also seeking the floor.
It's just a clarification as regards the hearings of the committees that can be conducted. When we say we will not be conducting new hearings, does this exclude hearings that were suspended and will just be, under our rules, allowed to resume as the hearings have yet to be terminated.
So the tradition is if there's a vacancy in the chairmanship, there's a vice chairman that takes over. But if the vacancy is in all,
Which is the case, Mr. President, because
in all, the chairman can continue the hearings that are ongoing. So my interpretation is, let's say you had a hearing today, you conducted it, then you say the next hearing is Monday. But we hope to finish the committees by Monday in consultation with everyone so that hindi nga maipit lahat ng trabaho natin.
So with the understanding, Mr. President, that this suspension of our rules by unanimous consent.
It's not a suspension, it's a tradition that is consistent with the rules. Because when you're chairman, you're automatically still a member of that. Yes. I'm telling you what the Secretariat informed me yesterday because Senator Pia called me and called my attention and told me na presyo ng kuryente yung hearing niya. So unless we designate her again as chairman of energy, so I consulted the secretariat and they mentioned the tradition that you don't have to cancel the hearing.
Just a question, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Independent.
Thank you, Mr.
Independent leader. There's two of you.
There's two of us, two independent leaders. But Mr. President, just a quick question. Yes, because it's a bit confusing to our colleagues when they asked about their committee reports. Some are already supposed to be handled on the floor, the committee hearings, because I can recall that the motion yesterday was all positions vacant. So if it's all positions vacant, that would also mean the memberships.
Yes.
Mr. President.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I'm just asking for clarification so that we can be guided accordingly. If we do, then we have to reorganize really quickly.
That's why, Mr. President, if I may suggest, by unanimous consent, we can suspend our rules. And I would like to think that would be the better route in terms of allowing hearings to be conducted by former committee chairpersons and former members until Monday, as the Senate President earlier mentioned, that you would have disposed of the issue by Monday.
Yes. I am overwhelmed by the number of brilliant minds and former Senate Presidents. So with your permission to answer the question, former Senate President Escudero will give
Yes,
his
Mr. President. To lend some clarity to the issue at hand, I would like to read and spread onto the record Section 19 of our own rules. The chairman and the members of the permanent committee shall commence in the exercise of their duties upon their election. They shall cease when their successors shall have been elected or designated. So my understanding, given the plain meaning of this rule, is that the chairman, although their positions were respectively declared vacant, to avoid a void, shall continue until their successors shall have been designated and or elected. My understanding further is that should there be any BICAM that needs to be done or finished within this week until their successor shall have been elected, then it should proceed so as not to cause any undue delay without need of suspending the rules, Mr. President. I submit, Mr. President.
Yes. Again, Mr. President, it's the point. Well, the motion yesterday was to declare the positions vacant. So there is no chair, there is no vice chair, there are no members. So how can a committee convene or continue with its proceedings when there is no chairman, there are no members? Members and chairpersons and vice chairpersons are elected.
As a matter of courtesy and tradition.
And that's why,
instead of just saying the name and then replacing the chairman, which happens in certain instances with the permission of the two individuals. When there is a leadership change, usually there's a question of the chairmanship. So there's sometimes a motion to declare all positions vacant. But that is the brilliance of the rules. The rule is very clear. The chairman and the members of the permanent committee shall commence in the exercise of their election of their duties, and they shall cease when their successor have been elected or designated. So out of prudence, usually in controversial hearings and in new bills, etc. So for example, if the divorce bill is very controversial, and let's say Senator Villanueva was hearing it, and then he was replaced, usually he will not call another hearing out of prudence and respect for the body. But let's say he was hearing something about nutrition that everyone accepts. he would probably continue his hearing. But actually, this will also be mutin academic because probably by tomorrow and Monday, we will start and finish reading all of the chairmanships. And you usually have to have 3-day notice. So even if you want to have a hearing Monday or Tuesday, you have to have the notice tomorrow. So by Monday, we'll have all of this settled. I just mentioned it because Senator Pia reminded me about her hearing, and then I read some comments about some important matters and the cancellation. No? So it was really meant to address the present situation, maybe today, tomorrow, and Friday, if everyone has the pleasure of hearing on Friday, which includes Senator Bam, napaka-importante matapos natin yung voucher program. No?
Well, Mr. President, if I may suggest, so that we can dispense with this, is let's just suspend the rules with unanimous consent, with the understanding that this is to be a suspension until Monday when the matter has been resolved by the election of new
The problem is if you suspend the rule, you'll suspend Section 19, then it will be worse because there will be no...
Well, Mr. President, the trouble also with Section 19 is that it assumes there is a chairperson and a vice chairperson and members. We already declared all positions vacant. There are no chairpersons today. There are no vice chairpersons today. There are no members of all these committees today. So when you say they shall cease, they meaning as chairperson, as vice chairperson, and as members. But that's not the case. We declared all positions vacant.
Yes, and it is vacant, but they can continue until their successors have been elected. It is taught in law school that when there are rules, you have to interpret it in a logical way that makes it work. So there will be no reason for this rule if in fact we did not remove chairman, because then the rule would simply be the vice chairman would take over, the senior member, etc. So actually this rule takes care of any situation, including, for example, if 3 senators have resigned and have joined the executive department, and then every member from that committee resigned. Then they will continue to be vice chairman and committee members. If it's your pleasure, Senator, and I sort of see your point, but I see the logic of Senator, we can refer it to the Committee on Rules.
Yes, I think that would be better, Mr. President, so that we can get a clear definition or a clear ruling or a recommended ruling from the Committee on Rules and legal interpretation of this particular rule.
Thank you for bringing that up. No?
Thank you, Mr.
And at least we'll clear it up so that those who have important hearings will not need to cancel it.
Just on that point, Mr. President, the reason why I'm raising this is because we do have committee reports that we are ready to submit. And so we would like to be clear as to, can we still submit these committee reports today, tomorrow? Can we still sponsor committee reports that have been submitted tomorrow or maybe even Monday? Because we do have committee reports that we can sponsor.
So, preliminarily, if you follow the rule, Section 19, you can. But prudence, usually, on controversial bills, they do not, because the ratio between minority and majority also changes, and sometimes the alignments are ideological, sometimes the alignments are political, sometimes the bill are the same. So it really depends, no?
Yes,
but again, the new majority will endeavor to finish the reorganization latest Monday. No?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Just for the record.
The comments are on the record and referred to the Committee on Rules.
Yes, Mr. President. And just for the record, we were supposed to sponsor 2 measures on under the as chairman of the Committee on Justice on the citizenships of 2 the principal sponsor, Senator Bongo and Senator Pia Cayetano.
Are they here today?
They were here yesterday, but I want to know if we can schedule it tomorrow.
Majority Leader,
Mr. President.
may I request that you discuss with Senator Pangilinan and the 2 sponsors? Maybe we can accommodate tomorrow.
Because there is a timeline as to the... okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. We will be ready tomorrow. Thank you, Mr.
We'll do that, Mr. President, and I hope the real majority leader will be elected soon, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, and just to
you mean
give
the
our
permanent,
colleagues,
permanent permanent majority leader. not
Colleagues, the opportunity to vote on third reading, Mr. President. May I respectfully move to consider on third reading of bills. Mr. President, the printed copies of these bills were electronically distributed to the members on May 8, 2026 in compliance with the 3-day rule in the Constitution. And so with that, Mr. President, I move to approve on third and final reading Senate Bill number 1894. This bill enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1894 on third reading is in order. The Senate Secretary is directed to read the title of the bill and proceed with the voting.
Senate Bill number 1894, an act enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, amending for the purpose of Public Act number 10931. Roll call of members. Senator Aquino. Senator Cayetano Pia. Senator De La Rosa. Senator Ejercito. Senator Escudero. Senator Estrada.
Was in Crisis Situation or AICS Act. This legislation goes beyond merely institutionalizing assistance. It institutionalizes the spirit of malasakit in public service. More importantly, it affirms our collective duty as a public servant to ensure that in times of hardship and uncertainty, government responds not with indifference but with urgency, compassion, and decisive action for the welfare of every Filipino. Sa gitna po ng hirap at pangangailangan, hindi dapat pinapabayaan ng ating mga kababayan. Ang tulong ng pamahalaan ay dapat mabilis, maayos at may malasakit. Mr. President, allow me to extend my sincerest gratitude to all the authors who stood behind this measure. Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Christopher Bongo, Senator Jingo Estrada, to Senator Joel Villanueva who conveyed his intention to be made co-author of this significant bill. Thank you, Madam and Sirs. Your support reflects our shared belief that public service must always put people first. Maraming salamat po sa inyong dedikasyon at tunay na malasakit sa sambayan ng Pilipino. The significance of the AICS program becomes even more evident during periods of national and global uncertainty, when ordinary Filipinos are most vulnerable to the effects of economic disruption. Sa panahon po ng krisis, higit na naramdaman ng ating mga kababayan ang pangangailangan ng agarang tulong at tunay na malasakit mula po sa ating pamahalaan. Amid the recent tensions involving Iran and resulting volatility in global oil prices, assistance mechanism under AICS program became an important source of relief for many Filipinos, particularly in transport drivers and operators who bore the heavy burden of rising fuel costs. Sa patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng langis, maraming super at operator ang nahirapang maitawid po, Ginoong Pangulo, ang araw-araw na pangangailangan ng kanilang pamilya. Through timely emergency assistance and fuel subsidy interventions, our government was able to provide much-needed relief and help lighten the daily burden of those who, despite rising costs and personal sacrifices, continue to keep our communities connected, our economy moving forward. Sa pamagitan po ng agarang tulong mula sa AICS, na ipapakita po natin na ang pamahalaan may malasakit ay hindi po nagpapabaya, lalo na sa mga manggagawang patuloy na nagsasakripisyo para sa sambayanan. To the committees, technical working groups, partner agencies, and hardworking personnel behind this legislation, we thank you for transforming compassion into concrete action. To my distinguished colleagues, may we continue to craft laws that are not only responsive but humane. Law that recognizes that governance is not merely about programs and budgets, but about people, dignity, and hope. Ang pagpasa po ng AICS Act ay isang matibay na patunay na ang pamahalaan ay may malasakit, ay pamahalaang tunay na kumakalinga, handa lagi umalalay, umunawa at tumugon sa pangangailangan ng bawat Pilipino sa oras po ng kagipitan. Again, Mr. President, to all the authors and supporters of the AICS Act, thank you for your unity, compassion, and unwavering commitment to the Filipino people. We stand united, no matter what political colors we have. There is no crisis too great that we cannot overcome. Muli po, maraming salamat sa aking mga kasamahan, both in the majority and minority, at sa sambayan ng Pilipino. Thank you and good afternoon, Ginoong
Well,
Pangulo.
the chair recognizes the work of the good senator in social justice and social welfare. Very well taken ang manifestation, except the part that he said he will be leaving the committee. We're not yet that sure, as we recognize your work in that committee. Thank you for your manifestation. Senator,
Mr. President, next to explain her vote, especially on Senate Bill number 1894, is the distinguished lady from Antique, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Higher and Technical Education, Senator Lauren Legarda. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I would like to thank all our colleagues in the unanimous vote on the free tertiary education amendments. And we know that this measure strengthens RA 10931 and ensures the promise of free and equitable tertiary education, that it truly reaches the poorest Filipino families. EDCOM 2 revealed stark gaps in the implementation of student assistance programs. Many of our most vulnerable learners continue to struggle with the rising cost of transportation, food, housing, and school requirements despite existing support mechanisms. This bill ensures that limited government resources are directed first to those who need them most, aligns allocation strictly with household income, guarantees timely inflation-adjusted support, and demands accountability for the use of public funds. Ang edukasyon ay hindi lang dapat libre, dapat ito'y makabuluhan at nagubungan ng tunay na oportunidad mula enrollment hanggang graduation at trabaho. This measure is for our students, especially the poorest, who now know that the government stands behind their dreams. Dapat laging patas ang pagbibigay ng pagkakataon sa bawat batang Pilipino na nangangarap. I would like to thank my fellow EDCOM 2 commissioners, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, now Senate President, as well as Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Christopher Lawrence Go, Senator Francis Escudero, Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator J.V. Ejercito, Senator Rafi Tulfo, Senator Robin Padilla, and Senator Kiko Pangilinan for your steadfast support. I express my deep gratitude to all who joined in advancing this measure. And just to take note that the House of Representatives had already passed this measure on third reading. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I ask for this representation's recognition, Mr. President, our dear colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros, is seeking the floor. May I move that she be recognized, Mr. President?
Yeah, Senator Ontiveros is recognized. And we thank Senator Legarda for her explanation of the vote.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Inquiry, Mr. President, in line dun sa action ng body natin regarding Senator Pangilinan on the suggestion of Senator Lacson. Two inquiries, Mr. President. For clarity, Mr. President, dahil this representation is the former chair of the Senate Committee on Women and also former chair of the Senate Committee on Health. Kanina po kasi ang conversation nga ay tungkol sa committee hearings for bills that are ready for amendments on the floor. Halimbawa itong apat, Mr. President. So ang unang inquiry ko po, would I still be allowed to introduce the amendments as former chair in relation po to the action of the body on holdover capacity of Senator Pangilinan in his former committee, Mr. President?
So as to introducing individual amendments as a senator, of course, that's always your right. But as to sponsoring, the majority leader and myself will be discussing all the pending bills on the floor when we go in caucus right after this. And we hope to ask for a all-member caucus by tomorrow to discuss that, but also to discuss the articles of impeachment.
Salamat, Mr. President. And this representation anticipates the response of the Senate President and the Majority Leader. Just to add one detail on the anti-hospital detention bill, ang particular status po niyan, Mr. President, is babasahin na lang yung amendments. And then, pending the decision of the body, pwede na pong i-close on second reading. Second and last inquiry for now, Mr. President, regarding the bills that are for interpellation, because lastly, this representation is also former chair of the Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms. Bills, Mr. President, like the party list reform, the anti-political dynasty bill, and then also within the Committee on Health, the UHC Medical Assistance Program, and the Healthcare Proxy Act. So again, Mr. President, should this representation continue to sponsor and defend them on the floor, or is it correct that the leadership change has prevented this, Mr. President?
Same answer, and to be completely honest, because Senator Villanueva has not accepted the position of Majority Floor Leader, so I cannot assign him to go to the former chairpersons to get their pleasure yet because he has only agreed to be acting floor leader. But after our caucus this afternoon, tomorrow, we should have a regular, not real, a permanent majority leader, at least until the body would like to pick someone else. No?
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. And I know that...
the chair would like to thank you for your work on the Committee on Health.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this representation knows that the Senate President is also keenly aware kung ganong katagal at katinding iniintay itong mga bills ng mga iba't ibang stakeholders at partners ng Senado, including mga children's rights advocates, syempre yung mga lahat ng pasyenteng Pilipino at mga pamilya po nila, yung ating mga barangay health workers, yung mga political reform advocates, among others, Mr. President. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Just for the answer regarding your query as far as the rules are concerned, because the author of the bill can also sponsor, a member of the committee can also sponsor, and the former chair is a member of the committee. So technically, you can. So it's just a matter of the majority leader and the new majority would like that on the floor at the moment. And again, I thank you. I thank Senator Pia, Senator Loren, Senator Bongo on your work on the Committee on Health. I was informed recently, hindi na naman nabid or hindi pa nabibid, that's 2 weeks ago, yung flu vaccines. And meron dalawang hemisphere yan southern and northern. No? Yung sa atin, patapos na or tapos na by now, patapos na ata, hindi pa rin nabibid. So we really need the Department of Health to shape up. No? And your work during your term as chairman of the Committee on Health is appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. President, Senator Mark Villar is also seeking the floor to explain his vote. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Mark Villar is recognized.
Mr. President, allow me to explain my yes vote and my unyielding support for Senate Bill number 1894, or the Act Enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. Mr. President, Republic Act number 10931, or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, was enacted to provide adequate funding and similar mechanisms to increase the participation rate among all socio-economic classes in tertiary education. While the law provides for free tuition, it does not cover the incidental expenses of studying and going to school in college. Mr. President, maraming kabataang Pilipino ang gusto makapagtapos ng kolehiyo, ngunit walang sapat na pinansyal na kakayahan upang tustusan ang pang-araw-araw na gastusin sa eskwelahan. Bagaman libre ang tuition fee, mahirap para sa ilan nating mga kababayan ang tiyakin na mayroon silang gagastusin sa pamasahe at pagkain pagpasok sa eskwelahan. Kung kaya, Mr. President, napipilitan ng marami na tumigil sa pag-aaral para magtrabaho upang tustusan ang pang-araw-araw na gastusin ng sarili at ng kanilang pamilya. Sa pag-aproba natin ng panukalang ito, wala nang estudyante ang mapipilitang magtrabaho upang tustusan ang kanilang pag-aaral. Posible na makapag-focus na sila sa kanilang pag-aaral at hindi naisipin kung saan kukunin ang panggastos. Mr. President, this bill will narrow the gap between the objectives of the free tertiary education law and the glaring realities on the ground faced by the underprivileged and marginalized. Again, I would like to thank the distinguished lady from Antique, Senator Loren Legarda, for shepherding this bill, and of course, Senator Bam Aquino, for initially championing this measure in these very halls. With the indulgence of the good sponsor,
na pinaglaban rin po ito, marami pa iba. Then Senate President Tito Soto, mga kasamahan natin.
Marami rin pong gustong magtanong sa akin ng mga miyembro ng press. Bagamat tinangka ko po na wag munang umarap sa kanila dahil minsan po, imbes na makapag-clarify ka, lalo pong dumadami po ang mga issues. Kaya ako na pong nagpilit na parang iniiwasan ko na po. Kaya lang, hindi mo po maiwasan. Sa dami po nila, talagang hahabulin ka po eh. Ang una po nilang tanong sa akin, Sir, ipa-aresto niyo po ba si Senator Bato? So sagot ko po, Mr. President, tanong din. Ikaw, kayo, gusto nyo ipa-aresto? Ang sagot sa akin, hindi po, kayong tinatanong namin kasi kayo po ang nandito eh. Hindi, tinatanong ka rin kita, kasi Pilipino ka. Gusto mo bang makita ang isang senador na ibinoto ng sambayanang Pilipino? Aaresto sa loob mismo ng Senado? Hindi po. Okay, kung ikaw hindi, di lalo na ako. Kayo po ba na-interview rin ng gano'n?
Opo.
Sir President?
Nakakagulat po sapagkat ako po din mismo, mahal na kasama at idolo namin, Senator Marcoleta. Nagtataka din po ako sapagkat marami po sa mga tanong sa ating ibinabato. Parang tayo pa ay may kasalanan sa pagbibigay natin ng masasabing lugar sa ating kasama dito sa Senado. Samantalang meron naman po tayong adopted resolution number 44. Ako po'y nagtataka talaga bakit ang mga tanong ay para bang tayo ay harboring kagad ng kriminal.
Ginong Pangulo, Your Honor, yung nangyari po kahapon, mas naniniwala po ako sa dating Pangulo natin, Senator Soto, sa kanyang sinabi. Nung tinanong ko po siya kahapon, habang nagmimerienda po tayo, nung tayo nakasuspindi pa, sabi ko, Mr. SP, nung pinuntahan ka ba ng NBI, pinakita sa'yo yung warrant of arrest? Nakita mo ba? Hindi, sabi niya. Ako po naniniwala na talagang hindi nila ipinakita yung warrant of arrest sa ating dating Pangulo ng Senado. Ang ating pong miyembro ng press, Mr. President, mahilig lang silang tanong ng tanong eh. Pero yung basic yun ang ayaw nilang tanongin eh. Halimbawa si Trillanes, winawagayway niya, ito ay kayong warrant of ayaw man lang. Bakit hindi nila suriin? Pwede po bang makakuha ng kopya niyan? Kasi po kahapon, Sir President, Your Honor, nung makausap natin ng NBI Director, pwede mo ba kaming bigyan ng kopya ng warrant of arrest? Pwede mo rin ba kaming bigyan ng communication between the ICC and the Interpol? Sapagkat ang Interpol, ang karaniwang ginagamit po nila para i-execute yung warrant ng kanilang in-issue. Yan namang Interpol, gagamitin po niya yung counterpart dito sa ating bansa, ito po yung PCTC. So sabi ko, bigyan mo rin kami ng communication mula sa Interpol papunta sa PCTC. At mula sa PCTC, meron silang sulat din sa inyo at kayo nga ang dineputize para i-serve yung warrant of arrest kay Senator Bato. Maliwanag po yung sagot niya, Mr. President, Your Honor. Opo. Gusto ko po sanang itanong, Mr. President, kung nag-comply na yung NBI Director na yung ating hinihingi ng mga communications para mapagtibay natin kung talagang meron ngang in-issue, kung totoo nga po na merong warrant of arrest at hindi lang ginawa sa Claro M. Recto, para po lahat ay guided.
Yes.
Naibigay na po ba?
So number one, Senator Marcoleta, I apologize to you. You were present and in fact, you made very good points to the NBI Director. Number two, tama po kayo. He promised to officially communicate the warrant, and I told him he is welcome to serve the warrant. The issue is the actual arrest. So I asked my staff as to my office, wala. To our secretariat, may na-receive ba tayo from the NBI? Wala pa.
So,
Yeah, wala pa.
Mr. President, Your Honor, doon lamang po sa simpleng requirement natin, dahil nung gabing yun, ang sabi niya, hindi lang niya dala, nasa sasakyan niya. So hindi na natin siya pinilit, dahil yung sasakyan niya nasa labas. Pero, Mr. President, Your Honor, alas 5 na po eh. Yung po bang mga requirements na yun, simpleng-simple po para matukoy lang natin kung talagang merong warrant of arrest. Bakit hindi po hanggang ngayon ay naibibigay ng NBI na sila pala, allegedly, ang dineputize ng kung sino-sino na iserve ang warrant of arrest sa ating kasama? Bakit po? O baka nga po wala eh. Ito yung pinaka-problema. Ang dami pong kumakalat na issue sa labas. Tinatago raw natin, meron pa pong nagsabi kung sino-sino na yung pagkup-kup daw po natin, yung ginamit natin, yung in-adapt nating resolution number 44, sabi ni Trillanes, obstruction of justice. Yan po yung mga pinagsasabi nila. Your Honor, alam niyo po ba yung statement ng Permanent Mission of the Republic of the Philippines sa United Nations noong 79th session of the UN General Assembly?
Ba, napakaganda po niyan. Mas maganda po, basahin niyo po sa amin.
Kasi hindi mo pa alam, di ba?
Opo.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Ito po kasi may kaugnayan sa pinag-uusapan natin eh. Ito pong 79th session of the UN General Assembly ay may kinalaman po sa pagde-define ng scope and application of the principle of universal jurisdiction. Ito po ay naganap, Mr. President, on October 16, 2024. Kasi po, bilang tayo po ay permanent member ng United Nations, tinanong po nila yung ating posisyon. Paano ang pagkakaintindi mo sa principle kanya and application of universal jurisdiction? Ang sabi po ng Pilipinas, Mr. President, Your Honor, kami po sabi niya the general rule is that jurisdiction is territorial. Universal jurisdiction is an exception grounded on the need to preserve international order. Tama naman po yun eh. Ang pinag-uusapan po na, sinight po ng ating gobyerno, Mr. President, yung Section 17 ng Republic Act number 9551. At sinasabi po nila doon, sabi po ng ating permanent mission, Section 17 of RA number 9851 specifically provides for the Philippine jurisdiction over persons, whether military or civilian, suspected or accused of a crime defined and penalized under Republic Act 1951, regardless where the crime is committed. Sa mga tweet, tayo na po ang nagsabi sa United Nations na tayo po yung merong jurisdiction. At sinama pa nga po yung article Section 18 na kung saan ang Regional Trial Court po ang merong jurisdiction. Primary and exclusive jurisdiction. Kanina po, Mr. President, Your Honor, binanggit po ninyo, yung warrant of arrest kasi kanya galing sa korteng hindi sa domestic nanggaling. Nanggaling naman talaga raw sa ICC. Ipagpalagay na po natin, Mr. President, na totoo nga at hindi peke yung warrant of arrest. Kunwari valid. Ang sinasabi po ng ating batas, Mr. President, isasagawa mo lang ito sang-ayon or in accordance with the extradition laws and treaties obtaining in this country. Mr. President, wala po tayong extradition treaty sa ICC for the simple reason that ICC is not a country. Wala rin po tayong treaty sapagkat nag-withdraw na po tayo sa ICC. O paano niya po i-apply yung kanilang warrant of arrest? Ang jurisdiction po ay atin na. Mr. President, Your Honor, on May 10, 2026, ang ating kasama, Senator Bato, was served a subpoena by the CIDG for the alleged crime of EJK. Ano po ibig sabihin nun, Mr. President? Yung pag-serve po ng subpoena, na-operationalize na po, active na po yung kaso, kahit nasa investigative and prosecutorial stage pa lang, ibig sabihin, our National Prosecution Service is already actively on the case. Paano po papasok ang ICC? The core function of the ICC, Mr. President, is under the principle of complementarity. Ibig sabihin, kung meron pong local court na gumagawa na po ng kanilang tungkulin, wala na pong pakialam ang ICC. Ang nangyari po, aktibo na pong pinupurso ang kaso, allegedly, EJK sa ating kasamahan. Papasok pa uli ang ICC. Sarili po ba nilang prinsipyo ay kanilang babaliwalain? Papayag ka ba doon, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Hindi po tayo dapat pumayag at katunayan nga po, katulad po ng sinasabi ng ating ibang kasama na ito daw ating pinag-uusapan ay wala daw itong kwenta. Napaka-imposible po nun. Sapagkat itong ating pinag-uusapan, katulad po ng sinasabi ninyo, ay soberenya ito ng Pilipinas. Kung sa paniwala po nila, ay hindi. Pero sa paniwala po natin, sayang yung bandila na yan. Kung tayo po ay magpapasakop sa isang korte lamang na hindi naman isang bansa at uutusan tayo na isuko ang isang senador sa kanila.
Salamat po sa inyong sagot, Mr. President, Your Honor. At nung tinangka po nila na mag-serve daw ng di umano ay warrant of arrest, Mr. President, bakit po ang nagsisilbing process server ay si Antonio Trillanes?
Sheriff po siya ngayon yata ng ICC.
Meron po ba kayong impormasyon na si po ay naglilingkod na sa ICC o sa Interpol, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Siguro po, action speaks louder. May dala po siyang warrant o sheriff.
Kung totoo na meron siyang dalang warrant.
Yun po. Opo, pag napatunayan po na yun ay warrant of arrest, sheriff na po siya.
Kailangan pong malaman natin kung siya ay process server, sheriff, o deputized officer ng ICC o ng Interpol. At kailangan tawagin din po natin, Mr. President, ang representasyon ng Philippine Center for Transnational Crimes sapagkat sila po yung counterpart ng Interpol. Pagka po binaypass nila yung opisina na yon, maliwanag na maliwanag po, peki po yung warrant of arrest, Mr. President. At peki din po yung nagseserve ng warrant of arrest. Naniniwala po ba kayo?
Hanggat hindi po natin nakikita ang kopya na yan, lumalabas po na peki yan.
Mr. President, Your Honor, alam niyo po ba yung bilateral immunity agreement sa pagitan ng United States of America at ng ating bansa?
Alam ko po yan, nasa Quran po yan.
Nasaan po?
Nasa Quran po.
Ang binabanggit ko po ay ang nasa paragraph 2 ng bilateral immunity agreement.
Kaya ko po sinabi nasa Quran dahil ang sabi po sa Quran, kapag yung bagay na hindi mo alam, itanong mo sa nakakaalam. Pakisabi po.
Hindi po. Tinatanong ko lang naman po kung alam ninyo kasi kung alam na ninyo, hindi na po ako magtatanong.
Hindi po. Kaya ipaalam nyo na po sa amin.
Ayan. Mr. President, ito pong sinasabi kong ito, may kinalaman na naman po kasi. Malaking kinalaman sa ating pinag-uusapan ngayon. Dito po kasi sa paragraph 2 nitong bilateral immunity agreement na ito na ginawa noong May 13, 2003, minsan po itawagin ito na non-surrender agreement. Sinasabi po rito na ang isang citizen ng isang partido, ibig sabihin ng Amerika, na nandito sa ating bansa, ay hindi mo pwedeng isurrender o i-transfer by means sa isang international tribunal for any purpose unless such tribunal has been established by the United Nations Security Council. Ano po ang ibig sabihin doon, Mr. President, Your Honor? Yung ICC po kasi, hindi po established international tribunal ng UN Security Council. Kaya nga po, kung mapapansin nyo, Mr. President, Your Honor, ang Amerika at ang Russia, hindi partido ng ICC. Wala silang, ayaw nila yan. Kinamumuhian nila yan. Dito po sa agreement na ito, tayo po, ang bansa natin, may katungkulan na hindi niya isusurrender ang isang Amerikano. Militar man yan, civilian, nang walang consent yung Amerika. Ano po yung ironical implication nito, Mr. President? Tayo po pumayag sa pagitan ng kasunduang ito na ipagmamalasakit natin ang isang Amerikano na nandito sa ating bansa, hindi siya pwedeng i-transfer o surrender sa ICC sapagkat yan ay hindi recognized ng UN Security Council. Pero tayo, senador, Pilipino, meron siyang mandato sa ating mga mamamayan. Hindi ba kapalintunaan ito, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Opo. Tama po kayo. Yan po ay ibinoto po yan ng taong bayan. Katulad po ni Senator Bato, 20 million po ang bumoto dyan.
Kaya ko lang po tinatanong, Sir President, hindi ko po lubos na maisip, tayo pala kaya nating ipagtanggol ang hindi isang Pilipino, kahit hindi Pilipino, dahil lamang nakipagkasunduan tayo. Pero sarili nating kapwa Pilipino, may mandato sapagkat nagsisilbing senador ng ating bansa. Hindi natin kayang ipagtanggol. Ito po yung irony na napakahirap siguro natanggapin ng bawat isang Pilipino. Tama po kayo eh. Ang warrant of arrest po ay galing sa ICC. Ang kaso po ni Senator Trillanes ay iba sapagkat ang nag-issue ng warrant of arrest ay sarili nating korte na kailangang igalang. Ganon din po ang warrant of arrest na inisyo kay dating Senador Laila de Lima. Pero ito'y natatangi po eh. Kung totoo po na yun, ay talagang totoong warrant of arrest. At yun ay nakabase sa saligan mismo ng Rome Statute. Bakit hindi muna nila unang basahin, Mr. President, yung Article 59 ng Rome Statute, na kung saan sinasabi ron, yung aarestuhin mong tao, kailangan madaliin mong ilagak sa isang competent judicial authority ng custodial state. Ano ang custodial state? Yung ating bansa. Bakit po kailangan yon? Maski ang ICC kinikilala niya yon. Dahil meron pong mga prosesong dapat na mapagtibay. Una, kailangan malaman natin kung yung warrant of arrest applicable doon sa tao na yon. Dito lang sa pinag-uusapan natin, hindi applicable kay Senator Bato. So meron siyang recourse para questionin yung warrant of arrest. Kaya importante na ilagak mo siya sa isang competent judicial authority. Ang isa pang kinakailangan mo maisaalang-alang doon, Mr. President, Your Honor, ay kailangan yung proseso ay naigalang lahat. At lalong-lalo na yung kanyang karapatan ay talagang nasino. Yun po yung inihingi noon eh. At ang isa pa po, meron siyang karapatan na magpetisyon kung sakaling yung custodial state na yon ay i-detain yung na-aresto, na magpetisyon ng immediate release or provisional release. Lahat ng ito ay hindi magagawa, Mr. President, Your Honor, kung kikilalanin natin yung warrant of arrest na valid sa ating jurisdiction. Meron po siyang katapat na batas eh. Meron tayong local na batas, RA 9851, na humahatol at nagbibigay parusa sa mga ganun ding mga kasalanan na siya din naman ang nililitis ng ICC. So sa prinsipyo po ng complementarity, Mr. President, maliwanag na maliwanag po na nasa jurisdiction na po ng ating lokal na mga hukuman ang pag-aasunto kung meron ng basihan sa ating kasama. Hindi na dapat kilalanin yung ICC sapagkat ang batayan lang nila ay yung tinatawag na principle of complementarity. Malinaw po na nangunguna po, may primary po jurisdiction ang ating lokal na korte. Exclusive and primary jurisdiction, yun po importante. Ngayon, yung pong mga nagkukunwa na process server, nagkukunwa na sheriff, nagkukunwa kung ano man sila ng ICC, kung bayaran sila o hindi, dapat po tingnan muna nila lahat yung mga bagay na pinag-uusapan natin. Bago nila puntahan ang isang institusyon katulad nito, nahahabulin pa yung isa sa atin. Ang pangyayari po kahapon, ulitin po natin, Mr. President, kailanman po ay hindi nangyari sa kasaysayan ng institusyong ito. Tinanong ko pa nga po kahapon sa ating director ng NBI dahil pinipilit niya. Kaya po nung papunta na, kung makakapasok po si Senator Bato sa session hall, ay wag nyo na siyang tutugisin. Para bang ang parte lamang ng Senado, Mr. President, ay itong session hall. So nung tinanong ko, bakit po yung parking area namin na kung saan nagsimula ang habulan at saka yung mga hagdanan ay hindi ba parte ng institusyong ito? Sir, sabi niya, hindi naman po kami magiging ganito kung hindi po kami nakipag-coordinate. Hindi po ako naniniwalang nakipag-coordinate sila ng totohanan, Mr. President. Mas naniniwala po ako sa ating former President na hindi niya papayagan kung alam lamang niya ang kanilang balak na pagdakip at pamamaraan ng pag-iinsulto sa bulwagang ito, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po, Your Honor.
Maraming salamat po, Madam President. Madam President.
Senator Padilla, please proceed. Yes.
Opo. Meron lang po akong mga konting katanungan sa inyo. Sapagkat gusto ko po sanang ireklamo si Senator Pangilinan sa pagsigaw. Meron po ba sa rules natin na sinasabing pwede mong sigawan ng kapwa mo senador?
Mr. President.
Narinig ko yung malakas na boses ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Alam ko na si Senator Pangilinan ay dating galing sa broadcasting, baka nag-modulate. Maari po ba tayo ay mag-suspend muna para pag-usapan yung malakas na boses at wari pagsigaw ni Senator Pangilinan?
Excuse me, nasa akin po yung floor.
Senator Padilla has the floor. The chair is answering the question of Senator Padilla. Session is suspended.
It's unlegitimate. So anyway, thank you for bringing it up and you have the floor, Senator Padilla.
Ginoong Pangulo, gusto ko naman pong ibalita sa ating mga kasama na naging maganda po ang responde ng Commission on Human Rights sapagkat kaninang umaga po nakipagpulong sila sa atin at nakipagpulong po sila sa USAA at kay Senator Bato de la Rosa patungkol po sa nangyari na karahasan at pang-aabuso sa karapatang pantao ng ating mga kasama dito sa Senado. Pangalawa, gusto ko lamang din pong iparating sa ating mga taong bayan na magkakaiba po ang kaso ni Senator Trillanes at Senator De Lima sa kaso po ni Senator Bato. Dahil si Senator Bato, ang warrant po niya ay hindi galing sa Pilipinas. Ang warrant po niyan ay galing sa ibang bansa, sa isang dayuhang korte. Ito po ay malayo doon sa usapin na sila ang kustudiya po ni Senator De Lima at ni Senator Trillanes dito lang sa Pilipinas. Ito pong mangyayari kay Senator Bato ay dadalhin po sa ibang bansa. Medyo yung po pag-isipan nating mabuti. Dapat bang mangyari muli ang nangyari kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte? Dapat bang mangyari pa yan muli sa isang Pilipino? Yun lamang po, sana alam natin ang pagkakaiba ng warrant galing sa Pilipinas at warrant sa isang korte lang ng ibang bansa. Yun po, maraming salamat po.
Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order, Mr.
We were going to recognize Senator Marcoleta, but this is a point of order, so we recognize Senator
Yes, Mr.
Pangilinan.
President. My understanding is this matter was already referred to the Committee on Rules. And all such manifestations should have been referred to the Committee on Rules.
Senator Pangilinan, Senator Lacson gave several privileged speech, even if the matter was already referred to the committee report.
I
So,
understand, Mr.
as a matter of tradition,
I understand, Mr.
we allow that.
Ginoong Pangulo, pinilabas yung warrant of arrest kagabi lang, tapos na tayo dito.
I
Yes, that's why
understand.
this.
Na sinabi po na yung warrant of arrest ay tunay.
I understand, Mr. President, and therefore I'm appealing that perhaps this matter should be tackled in the committee rather than in this in plenary, so that we can address other concerns, Mr. President.
The appeal-
And for the record, Mr.
Paano natin pag-uusapan yung ibang...
And for the record, Mr. President, I still have the floor. And for the record, Mr. President, we voted against resolution number 44. So to say that we have this resolution, yes, but there are senators who voted against it. And therefore, it is not necessarily our agreement with the points being raised by the good senator from Camarines Norte.
For the record, Senator Padilla did mention a while ago that he doesn't take it against and he acknowledges that some senators voted against it, and it's on the record. Having said that, the appeal is noted, but I just like to mention that we usually give each other leeway depending on the importance of the matter, and the threat to Senator Bato is live. There's been no official communication that he is free until a Philippine court issues a warrant of arrest. No? So I ask the patience of each member, but acknowledge the statement and the interpretation, the proper interpretation of the rules by Senator Pangilinan. So, you
May
may
we ask
proceed,
Senator Marcoleta, Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Marcoleta,
He's
you're
been
now
waiting for
recognized.
quite a while.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Kahapon pa po ako naghihintay. Ang dami na po kasing nagsalita. Sana po kung sino naman yung nauna na nagsabi, pakiunan nyo naman po. Sa akin lang po, nagpo-point of order po tayo, pero tayo rin naman po nagbabiolate ng ating patakaran. Nangyari po kasi yung nangyari kahapon, Mr. President, sa unang kasaysayan, sa kasaysayan ng institusyong ito. Nakita ko po, Mr. President, kung paano ginawa ng mga NBI yung ating pasukan. Gumawa po sila ng checkpoint. Sa akin pong palagay, magmula po nung panahon ng Philippine Assembly, hanggang ngayon, wala pa pong nangyaring gano'n. Dahil po sa respeto sa tatlong dakilang nagkakahating bahagi ng ating pamahalaan, ang executive, legislative, at saka yung judiciary. Ngayon lamang po nagkaroon ng ganitong insidente kung paano niyurakan ang dangal ng institusyon na tayo pa po ang naririto. Mr. President, gusto ko po sanang magtanong ng ilang mga bagay sa ating kasama, sa kanyang mga tinuran na pangyayari, kaugnay po ng tangkang paghuli kay Senator Bato.
Ginoong Pangulo, mas maganda pong makatanggap tayo ng mga katanungan sa ating kasamang kahapon pa nag-aantay.
Yes.
Salamat po, Mr. President.
Please proceed unless you want to postpone that till tomorrow.
Mr. President, Your Honor, kanina po ay marami rin pong gustong magtanong sa akin ng mga miyembro ng press. Bagamat tinangka ko po na huwag munang umarap sa kanila dahil minsan po, imbes na makapag-clarify ka, lalo pong dumadami po ang mga issues. Kaya ako na pong nagpilit na parang iniiwasan ko na po. Kaya lang, hindi mo po maiwasan sa dami po nila, talagang hahabulin ka po eh. Ang una po nilang tanong sa akin, Sir, ipa-aresto niyo po ba si Senator Bato? So sagot ko po, Mr. President, tanong din. Ikaw, kayo, gusto niyong ipa-aresto? Ang sagot sa akin, hindi po, kayong tinatanong namin kasi kayo po ang nandito. Hindi, tinatanong ka rin kita kasi Pilipino ka. Gusto mo bang makita ang isang senador na ibinoto ng sambayanang Pilipino? Aaresto sa loob mismo ng Senado? Hindi po. Okay, kung ikaw hindi, di lalo na ako. Kayo po ba'y na-interview rin ng gano'n?
Opo,
Mr. President?
nakakagulat po sapagkat ako po din mismo mahal na kasama at idolo namin, Senator Marcoleta. Nagtataka din po ako sapagkat marami po sa mga tanong sa ating ibinabato. Parang tayo pa ay may kasalanan sa pagbibigay natin ng masasabing lugar sa ating kasama dito sa Senado. Samantalang meron naman po tayong adopted resolution number 44. Ako po yung nagtataka talaga, bakit ang mga tanong ay para bang tayo ay harboring kagad ng kriminal?
Ginoong Pangulo, Your Honor, yung nangyari po kahapon, mas naniniwala po ako sa dating Pangulo natin, Senator Soto, sa kanyang sinabi. Nung tinanong ko po siya kahapon, habang nagmimerienda po tayo, nung tayo nakasuspindi pa, sabi ko, Mr. SP, nung pinuntahan ka ba ng NBI, pinakita sa'yo yung warrant of arrest? Nakita mo ba? Hindi, sabi niya. Ako po naniniwala na talagang hindi nila ipinakita yung warrant of arrest sa ating dating Pangulo ng Senado. Ang ating pong miyembro ng press, Sir President, mahilig lang silang tanong ng tanong eh. Pero yung basic yun ang ayaw nilang tanongin eh. Halimbawa si Trillanes, winawagayway niya, ito ay kayong warrant of... Ayaw man lang... Bakit hindi nila suriin? Pwede po bang makakuha ng kopya niyan? Kasi po kahapon, Sir President, Your Honor, nung makausap natin ng NBI Director, pwede mo ba kaming bigyan ng kopya ng warrant of arrest? Pwede mo rin ba kaming bigyan ng communication between the ICC and the Interpol? Sapagkat ang Interpol, ang karaniwang ginagamit po nila para i-execute yung warrant ng kanilang in-issue. Yung namang Interpol, gagamitin po niya yung counterpart dito sa ating bansa, ito po yung PCTC. So sabi ko, bigyan mo rin kami ng communication mula sa Interpol papunta sa PCTC. At mula sa PCTC, meron silang sulat din sa inyo at kayo nga ang dineputize para iserve yung warrant of arrest kay Senator Bato. Maliwanag po yung sagot niya, Mr. President, Your Honor. Opo. Gusto ko po sanang itanong, Mr. President, kung nag-comply na yung NBI Director na yung ating hinihingi ng mga communications para mapagtibay natin kung talagang meron ngang in-issue, kung totoo nga po na merong warrant of arrest at hindi lang ginawa sa claro em recto, para po lahat ay guided.
Yes.
Naibigay na po ba?
So number one, Senator Marcoleta, I apologize to you. You were present and in fact, you made very good points to the NBI Director. Number two, tama po kayo. He promised to officially communicate the warrant and I told him he is welcome to serve the warrant. The issue is the actual arrest. So I asked my staff as to my office, wala. To our secretariat, may na-receive ba tayo from the NBI? Wala pa.
So,
Yeah, wala pa.
Mr. President, Your Honor, doon lamang po sa simpleng requirement natin dahil nung gabing yun, ang sabi niya, hindi lang niya dala, nasa sasakyan niya. So hindi na natin siya pinilit dahil yung sasakyan niya nasa labas. Pero, Mr. President, Your Honor, alas 5 na po eh. Yung po bang mga requirements na yun, simpleng-simple po para matukoy lang natin kung talagang merong warrant of arrest. Bakit hindi po hanggang ngayon ay naibibigay ng NBI na sila pala, allegedly, ang dineputize ng kung sino-sino na iserve ang warrant of arrest sa ating kasama? Bakit po? Baka nga po wala eh. Ito yung pinaka-problema. Ang dami pong kumakalat na issue sa labas. Tinatago raw natin, meron pa pong nagsabi kung sino-sino na yung pagkup-kup daw po natin, yung ginamit natin, yung inadapt nating resolution number 44, sabi ni Trillanes, obstruction of justice. Yan po yung mga pinagsasabi nila. Your Honor, alam niyo po ba yung statement ng Permanent Mission of the Republic of the Philippines sa United Nations noong 79th session of the UN General Assembly?
Ba, napakaganda po yan. Mas maganda po, basahin niyo po sa amin.
Kasi hindi mo pa alam, di ba?
Opo.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Ito po kasi may kaugnayan sa pinag-uusapan natin eh. Ito pong 79th session of the UN General Assembly ay may kinalaman po sa pagde-define ng scope and application of the principle of universal jurisdiction. Ito po yung naganap, Mr. President, on October 16, 2024. Kasi po, bilang tayo po ay permanent member ng United Nations, tinanong po nila yung ating posisyon. Paano ang pagkakaintindi mo sa principle kanya and application of universal jurisdiction? Ang sabi po ng Pilipinas, Mr. President, Your Honor, kami po sabi niya the general rule is that jurisdiction is territorial. Universal jurisdiction is an exception grounded on the need to preserve international order. Tama naman po yun eh. Ang pinag-uusapan po na sinight po ng ating gobyerno, Mr. President, is Section 17 ng Republic Act number 9551. At sinasabi po nila doon, sabi po ng ating permanent mission, Section 17 of RA number 9851 specifically provides for the Philippine jurisdiction over persons, whether military or civilian, suspected or accused of a crime defined and penalized under Republic Act 1951 regardless where the crime is committed. Sa mga tweet, tayo na po ang nagsabi sa United Nations na tayo po yung merong jurisdiction. At sinama pa nga po yung article, section 18 na kung saan ang regional trial court po ang merong jurisdiction. Primary and exclusive jurisdiction. Kanina po, Mr. President, Your Honor, binanggit po ninyo, yung warrant of arrest kasi kanya galing sa korteng hindi sa domestic nanggaling. Nanggaling naman talaga raw sa ICC. Ipagpalagay na po natin, Mr. President, na totoo nga at hindi peke yung warrant of arrest. Kunwari valid. Ang sinasabi po ng ating batas, Mr. President, isasagawa mo lang ito sang-ayon or in accordance with the extradition laws and treaties obtaining in this country. Mr. President, wala po tayong extradition treaty sa ICC. For the simple reason that ICC is not a country. Wala rin po tayong treaty sapagkat nag-withdraw na po tayo sa ICC. O paano niya po i-apply yung kanilang warrant of arrest? Ang jurisdiction po ay atin na. Mr. President, Your Honor, on May 10, 2026, ang ating kasama, Senator Bato, was served a subpoena by the CIDG for the alleged crime of EJK. Ano po ibig sabihin nun, Mr. President? Yung pag-serve po ng subpoena, na-operationalize na po, active na po yung kaso, kahit nasa investigative and prosecutorial stage pa lang, ibig sabihin, our National Prosecution Service is already actively on the case. Paano po papasok ang ICC? The core function of the ICC, Mr. President, is under the principle of complementarity. Ibig sabihin, kung meron pong local court na gumagawa na po ng kanilang tungkulin, wala na pong pakialam ang ICC. Nang nangyari po, aktibo na pong pinupurso ang kaso, allegedly, EJK sa ating kasamahan. Papasok pa uli ang ICC. Sarili po ba nilang prinsipyo ay kanilang babaliwalain? Papayag ka ba doon, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Hindi po tayo dapat pumayag at katunayan nga po, katulad po ng sinasabi ng ating ibang kasama na ito daw ating pinag-uusapan ay wala daw itong kwenta. Napaka-imposible po nun. Sapagkat itong ating pinag-uusapan, katulad po ng sinasabi ninyo, ay soberenya ito ng Pilipinas. Kung sa paniwala po nila, ay hindi. Pero sa paniwala po natin, sayang yung bandila na yan kung tayo po ay magpapasakop sa isang korte lamang na hindi naman isang bansa at uutusan tayo na isuko ang isang senador sa kanila.
Salamat po sa inyong sagot, Mr. President, Your Honor. At nung tinangka po nila na mag-serve daw ng di umano ay warrant of arrest, Mr. President, bakit po ang nagsisilbing process server ay si Antonio Trillanes?
Sheriff po siya ngayon yata ng ICC.
Meron po ba kayong impormasyon na si Poy naglilingkod na sa ICC o sa Interpol, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Siguro po, action speaks louder. May dala po siyang warrant o sheriff.
Kung totoo na meron siyang dalang warrant.
Yun po. Opo, pag napatunayan po na yun ay warrant of arrest, sheriff na po siya.
Kailangan pong malaman natin kung siya ay process server, sheriff o deputized officer ng ICC o ng Interpol. At kailangan tawagin din po natin, Mr. President, ang representasyon ng Philippine Center for Transnational Crimes sapagkat sila po yung counterpart ng Interpol. Pagka po binaypass nila yung opisina na yon, maliwanag po, peki po yung warrant of arrest, Mr. President. At peki din po yung nagseserve ng warrant of arrest. Naniniwala po ba kayo?
Hanggat hindi po natin nakikita ang kopya na yan, lumalabas po na peki yan.
Mr. President, Your Honor, alam niyo po ba yung bilateral immunity agreement sa pagitan ng United States of America at ng ating bansa?
Alam ko po yan, nasa Quran po yan.
Nasaan po?
Nasa Quran po.
Ang binabanggit ko po ay ang nasa paragraph 2 ng bilateral immunity agreement.
Kaya ko po sinabi nasa Quran dahil ang sabi po sa Quran, kapag yung bagay na hindi mo alam, itanong mo sa nakakaalam. Pakisabi po.
Hindi po, tinatanong ko lang naman po kung alam ninyo kasi kung alam na ninyo, hindi na po ako magtatanong.
Hindi po, kaya ipaalam nyo na po sa amin.
Ayan. Mr. President, ito pong sinasabi kong ito, may kinalaman na naman po kasi. Malaki ang kinalaman sa ating pinag-uusapan ngayon. Dito po kasi sa paragraph 2 nitong bilateral immunity agreement na ito na ginawa noong May 13, 2003, minsan po itawagin ito na non-surrender agreement. Sinasabi po rito na ang isang citizen ng isang partido, ibig sabihin ng Amerika, na nandito sa ating bansa, ay hindi mo pwedeng isurrender o i-transfer by means sa isang international tribunal for any purpose unless such tribunal has been established by the United Nations Security Council. Ano po ang ibig sabihin nun, Mr. President, Your Honor? Yung ICC po kasi, hindi po established international tribunal ng UN Security Council. Kaya nga po, kung mapapansin nyo, Mr. President, Your Honor, ang Amerika at saka ang Russia, hindi partido ng ICC. Wala silang, ayaw nila yan. Kinamumuhian nila yan. Dito po sa agreement na ito, tayo po, ang bansa natin, may katungkulan na hindi niya isusurrender ang isang Amerikano. Militar man yan, civilian, nang walang consent yung Amerika. Ano po yung ironical implication nito, Mr. President? Tayo po pumayag sa pamagitan ng kasunduang ito na ipagmamalasakit natin ang isang Amerikano na nandito sa ating bansa, hindi siya pwedeng i-transfer o surrender sa ICC sapagkat yan ay hindi recognized ng UN Security Council. Pero tayo, senador, Pilipino, meron siyang mandato sa ating mga mamamayan. Hindi ba kabalintunaan ito, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Opo, tama po kayo. Yan po ay ibinoto po yan ng taong bayan. Katulad po ni Senator Bato, 20 million po ang bumoto dyan.
Kaya ko lang po tinatanong, Sir President, hindi ko po lubos na maisip, tayo pala kaya nating ipagtanggol ang hindi isang Pilipino, kahit hindi Pilipino, dahil lamang nakipagkasunduan tayo. Pero sarili nating kapwa Pilipino, may mandato sapagkat nagsisilbing senador ng ating bansa. Hindi natin kayang ipagtanggol. Ito po yung irony na napakahirap siguro natanggapin ng bawat isang Pilipino. Tama po kayo eh. Ang warrant of arrest po ay galing sa ICC. Ang kaso po ni Senator Trillanes ay iba sapagkat ang nag-issue ng warrant of arrest ay sarili nating korte na kailangan igalang. Ganon din po ang warrant of arrest na inisyo kay dating Senador Laila de Lima. Pero ito'y natatangi po eh. Kung totoo po na yun, ay talagang totoong warrant of arrest. At yun ay nakabase sa saligan mismo ng Rome Statute. Bakit hindi muna nila unang basahin, Mr. President, yung Article 59 ng Rome Statute, na kung saan sinasabi ron, yung aarestuhin mong tao, kailangan madaliin mong ilagak sa isang competent judicial authority ng custodial estate. Ano ang custodial estate? Yung ating bansa. Bakit po kailangan yon? Maski ang ICC, kinikilala niya yon. Dahil meron pong mga prosesong dapat na mapagtibay. Una, kailangan malaman natin kung yung warrant of arrest applicable doon sa tao na yon. Dito lang, sa pinag-uusapan natin, hindi applicable kay Senator Bato. So meron siyang recourse para questionin yung warrant of arrest. Kaya importante na ilagak mo siya sa isang competent judicial authority. Ang isa pang kinakailangan mo maisaalang-alang doon, Mr. President, Your Honor, ay kailangan yung proseso ay naigalang lahat. At lalong-lalo na yung kanyang karapatan ay talagang nasino. Yun po yung inihingi nun eh. At ang isa pa po, meron siyang karapatan na magpetisyon kung sakaling yung custodial estate na yon ay i-detain yung naaresto, na magpetisyon ng immediate release or provisional release. Lahat ng ito ay hindi magagawa, Mr. President, Your Honor, kung kikilalanin natin yung warrant of arrest na valid sa ating jurisdiction. Meron po siyang katapat na batas eh. Meron tayong local na batas, RA 9851, na humahatol at nagbibigay parusa sa mga ganun ding mga kasalanan na siya din naman ang nililitis ng ICC. So sa prinsipyo po ng complementarity, Mr. President, maliwanag na maliwanag po na nasa jurisdiction na po ng ating lokal na mga hukuman ang pag-aasunto kung meron ng basihan sa ating kasama. Hindi na dapat kilalanin yung ICC sapagkat ang batayan lang nila ay yung tinatawag na principle of complementarity. Malinaw po na nangunguna po, may primary po jurisdiction ang ating lokal na korte. Exclusive and primary jurisdiction, ito po importante. Ngayon, yung pong mga nagkukunwa na process server, nagkukunwa na sheriff, nagkukunwa kung ano man sila ng ICC, kung bayaran sila o hindi, dapat po tingnan muna nila lahat yung mga bagay na pinag-uusapan natin. Bago nila puntahan ang isang institusyon katulad nito, nahahabulin pa yung isa sa atin. Ang pangyayari po kahapon, ulitin po natin, Mr. President, kailanman po ay hindi nangyari sa kasaysayan ng institusyong ito. Tinanong ko pa nga po kahapon sa ating director ng NBI dahil pinipilit niya. Kaya po nung papunta na, kung makakapasok po si Senator Bato sa session hall, ay wag nyo na siyang tutugisin. Para bang ang parte lamang ng Senado, Mr. President, ay itong session hall. So nung tinanong ko, bakit po yung parking area namin na kung saan nagsimula ang habulan at saka yung mga hagdanan na hindi ba parte ng institusyong ito? Sir, sabi niya, hindi naman po kami magiging ganito kung hindi po kami nakipag-coordinate. Hindi po ako naniniwalang nakipag-coordinate sila ng totohanan, Mr. President. Mas naniniwala po ako sa ating former President na hindi niya papayagan kung alam lamang niya ang kanilang balak na pagdakip at pamamaraan ng pag-iinsulto sa bulwagang ito, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po, Your Honor.
Maraming salamat po, Madam President. Madam President.
Senator Padilla, please proceed. Yes.
Opo. Meron lang po akong mga konting katanungan sa inyo. Sapagkat gusto ko po sanang ireklamo si Senator Pangilinan sa pagsigaw. Meron po ba sa rules natin na sinasabing pwede mong sigawan ng kapwa mo senador?
Mr. President.
Narinig ko yung malakas na boses ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Alam ko na si Senator Pangilinan ay dating galing sa broadcasting, baka nag-modulate. Maari po ba tayo ay mag-suspend muna para pag-usapan yung malakas na boses at wari pagsigaw ni Senator Pangilinan?
Excuse me, nasa akin po yung floor.
Senator Padilla has the floor. The chair is answering the question of Senator Padilla. Session is suspended.
So hanggang dito lang tayo mga tol. Maraming salamat sa panonood at patuloy na suporta. God bless you sa inyo lahat at hanggang sa muli. Paalam!
Kompleto, we all agreed naman na in accordance with the Constitution and the rules of the Senate, dalawa ang priority parate, di ba? Organization of the Senate. And so the committees naman na hindi controversial na pwede na naming basahin. And then to go to straight to refer the articles of impeachment to the Committee on Rules, which will report out right away, and then mag-convene na yung impeachment court. So that's the plan. Having said that, there are 24 senators. Some have already manifested to you their intent to bring up other matters which are most welcome. If ako tatanungin, I'd rather tapusin muna yung dalawang yon dahil precisely hindi pwede namang sobrang daming priorities. We have to prioritize. So when I say organizing the Senate, that's the committees. Of course, any move to change the leadership is also a priority. That's the prerogative of anyone, anytime.
Sir, kasi nung Friday kayo rin po yung nagsabi na may kumakausap from minority sa mga members ng majority. How stable is your majority block? May mga nagpaalam na po ba sa inyong lilipat sa kabila?
As of last night and as of yung sa group namin a few minutes ago, it's more all rumors. Pero hindi nagbago yung sinabi ko sa inyo. There were meetings that took place, calls from both sides. May enticement, may pananakot, may to be fair, it's not all wheeling and dealing. May appeal to the country, appeal to ganito, ganyan, etc. So but as I said dun sa ating bishops at pastors who prayed for the nation today dito sa Senate, yung attack on the Senate started naman in 2023, di ba? Nung gusto nilang i-abolish ang Senate. And I really believe that the events in the last few months was also intentional na ma-weaken ang Senate because bubuhayin yung constitutional change, except this time around, regional Senate ang gusto nila. But to do that, siguro, part of the enticement is that may term extension and then yun nga, regional Senate. In theory, maganda yon kasi each region will have their senators. But the reality is, if you have 36, 48, 60 senators, yung possibility na maging rubber stamp, nandun talaga. Diba? So at this time of crisis, I don't take it against anyone of thinking about political reforms, whether maganda yung motibo o hindi. Pero naghihirap ang tao eh. So whether you talk about electricity, agriculture, prices of gamot, prices of rice, dun muna sana. Having said that, kanya-kanyang pananaw yan eh. Iba pananaw din nila sa Senate leadership, di ba? Yung anyone but Cayetano, nung nag-attempt kami nung February, yung kandidato namin yun din ang sinabi sa amin eh. Anyone but siya. So ang point ko, I think it's more of anyone that they cannot control.
Sir, isa na lang sa akin. As of 2:03 ngayong hapon, you have 13, sir. Can you say that?
To the best of my knowledge, wala namang dun sa aming kamusta check, usap tayo mamaya, punta dito, 'di ba? So now, if pag-usap namin biglang may kakausap sa amin, that's beyond my control, no? So meaning as of Saturday and Sunday, so nag-meet pa kami Saturday, usap, made calls, Hindi ko naman nakausap lahat yesterday, talk to some. Okay pa lahat, sabi yung walang bibigay pero grabe ang pressure. At saka talagang pinag-aaway. Sinasabi daw may 13 na, may 14. So as of this morning, 7 o'clock, 7:35, sa 8 o'clock may tumatawag na. So okay na, wala namang hindi sumasagot sa chat groups at sa communication namin, di ba? Having said that, if may palitan naman, it would be smart naman to tell us in the last minute. And so it would be smart to tell in the last minute and I won't take it against them, di ba? So simple lang yan. Kung nilagay ako dito ng Panginoon for an 8-day mission, tatanggapin ko yon. Pero kung ang mission ko is simulan yung impeachment, tatanggapin ko rin yon, di ba? Yung isang senyales sa akin doon kung gaano kadali na nakuha ko yung Senate presidency, gaano kadali in the sense that saan ka nakakita, 12, hindi mo nililigawan, hindi mo pinapangakuan ng committees or kung ano man, lahat ng kapangyarihan around this earth ginamit against, pero they're sticking together, ituloy natin. So it's a privilege serving you, serving our people, serving the Senate. But pag sinabi nilang iiba direction, I will respect that.
So tanggap niyo, sir, sorry to ask, if you will be the shortest serving SP, sir?
It's not how long your life is, it's how meaningful it is. Diba? Some people live 100 years and say, where has the time gone? Diba? The Lord Jesus lived a little bit over 30 years, pero in 3 years, nagawa niya lahat ng gusto niyang gawin. Of course, I'm human. I think I can do much more if it's 8 months rather than 8 days, but that's not in my control.
Imar Santos, Newswatch.
Hi sir. Sir, your reaction lang po, merong mga calls for your resignation after what happened. Binabatikos po yung pag-alis ni Senator Bato, the shooting incident, and si Director Matibag also said you should be held accountable. Your reaction to all these?
Okay. Hindi pa naman ako SP, pinagre-resign na ako eh. Buong buhay ko naman ganun eh, di ba? So certain people are called for the job. So even before I took office as Senate President, tinanong ko sa 12, bakit ako? And may reason kung bakit ako. Maybe because I was there during the time of crisis. You remember, nung pandemic, nag-break ang Senate, di ba? Ang House, mas marami kami. Gusto nila mag-break kami. Sabi ko, hindi pwede. Kailangan makita nila may gobyerno. Konti na lang siguro tayo dito. I don't blame naman yung mga nagsuggest sa akin Wednesday night na wala daw pasok the next day, Thursday, at i-cancel lahat. Sabi ko, hindi pwede. Kailangan makita nila may gobyerno dito. So, ang message ko sa NBI, hindi nyo natibag ang Senado. Under Alan Cayetano, hindi nyo natibag ang Senado. So, kung sino man, if I continue or may papalit sa akin, okay? Ulitin ko ha, during my watch, hindi nyo natibag ang Senado. Now, kung if I remain or kung papalitan ako, sana hindi matibag ang Senado. The Senate is a target, di ba? Because we are the last line of defense sa pagdating ng hindi impartial na impeachment. We're the last line of defense sa budget. We're the last line of defense sa charter change. We're the last line of defense sa kung merong gustong yumurak o sumira sa ating democracy. I'm not saying we, the Senate. But leadership matters. Di ba? So, dun sa nagsasabing take responsibility, kayo pumasok dito, kayo na maril eh. Tapos kami pagre-resign ninyo. Dapat kayo mag-resign. Di ba? Pati yung mga ibang nagsasabing take responsibility for the shooting. I take responsibility for my reaction. Di ba? So, kung mamato ako dito, batuhin niyo ako pabalik, kayo magre-resign. Ako na mato eh. The one who takes, you take responsibility for your action. So I will take responsibility for my reaction, how I handled everything. But I cannot take responsibility for them shooting at us. Confirmed na, may gunpowder yung hinuli. Sa loob ng Senado hinuli yun ha. Until this time, may nagsasabi sa Pangulo na ang NBI daw nasa GSIS, wala daw dito sa loob at hindi daw nagpaputok. So makikita mo there's a lying all over going around. If they can lie with that simple thing, 'di ba? So sabi ko nga sa grupo namin, guys, hindi pwedeng maging general rule yung ginawa ng NBI. Tinetesting nila yung Senado. Unfortunately, dati, maraming nag-i-invoke dun sa spirit ni Salonga, Recto, Tanyada, yung Osmeña, Rojas, yung ating mga greats, di ba? In the past, pagka inattack ang Senate, nagka-come together lahat ng senador. Ngayon, algorithm at political bias na. That's what's sad about it, no? All the evidence is there. I mean, it's beyond our control na, like sa inyo, di ba? Pag dumating na sa editor, dumating na sa final, dumating sa live interviews, hindi nyo kontrolado lahat yon. Pero yung personal experience nyo at personal testimony nyo, meaning, pag tinanong kayo ng kapatid nyo, anak nyo, pag uwi nyo, ano ba talaga nangyari? Eyewitness din kayo eh. Diba? So, yun din ang ano ko sa inyo. Kung eyewitness kayo and you think I did wrong, I won't take it against you for calling for the resignation. But if you're telling me na kontrolado ko yung NBI, so dun sa nagsabing scripted, di ba? Ang galing ko naman na pati NBI is under my command pala.
So you won't resign, sir?
There's no reason to eh. Diba? Many of those who are calling for my resignation are political operators eh. Dati na silang may, meaning nung nasa DFA ako, resign Alan. Nung nasa